Welcome back, you lovely people. It's so good to have y'all with us. My name's James Johnson. We have the lovely Alizey here, my beautiful mama LaDonna, the universal Niko, and the wonderful TeeBaby here. Charlie won't be able to join us tonight. MP won't either. They both got things that came up last minute, and we love you, Charlie and MP. I've invited Clare Gray. She may be joining us. I've also invited Tony. Haven't heard back from either of them yet, but it's possible they're able to join us. We'll continue either way. So this being a small group, we'll try to get a little bit in depth about some moral quandaries that occurred. If we'll just go by and do introductions, we'll start with Mom, and then Niko, and then T, and then we'll do Alizey. And if you could give it a glass candles. So how many out of 10 glass candles would you give this particular episode compared to all the rest? I'll start. First time I watched it, the battle, the ship battle, I was a little distracted because it seemed really tight. But after watching it more than once, I ultimately really did like that scene. There's a lot to. This seemed like all of the episodes seem jam-packed, but simultaneously a setup for the next couple of episodes. So I give this one, and again, I'm comparing it to Game of Thrones, I'd give this one a 7. Mama has apparently left, which makes no fucking sense. Okay, there she is. Mama, what'd you think about this episode? Some glass candles, and say hi to everybody.
Hey guys, it's me, and I'm trying to get my headphones on. That's why I left. I thought it was a 7 as well. But again, it's a setup scene. So yeah, I really liked it. I mean, I'm just shocked at how fast they're going. That's my main thing. They're going so fast. They're streamlining exactly what's happened, and we'll save the discussion for later. And from now on, let's just call TeeBaby the assassin.
That's perfect. Some people were making some comments last time about her on-point comments. So assassin's perfect. That's your moniker from now on, TeeBaby, the assassin T. Different from absentee. You're the assassin T. Niko, would you say hi to everybody? Mom, keep yourself muted.
Hello, people, and hello from really dark Serbia. So for this episode, I would give it a 7. James, you stole my grade. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. It was just a setup, and it was not good. It was not bad. It was just the episode. There was nothing substantial happening. So I don't. Maybe some of you will disagree with me, but like it was okay. I wasn't mad at anything. I wasn't, like, oh, something. Well, I'm lying. I love the Arya scene very much. And LaDonna, I love your hairstyle today. It's really lovely. Yes, and everybody's commenting. So do I need to add something? I don't think so. So TeeBaby, it's your turn.
Hey everyone, it's T. I love that nickname, so I'll take it. You guys are more, I think, you know what, I didn't give it a 7. I thought it was an okay episode. Some things I really enjoyed watching, some things I was like, oh, we could have done without. So I'm going to say it's a 5, which means that I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like I didn't like it or I like hated it. But I'm curious about how you guys felt about Dany and Arya and Jon. It definitely was a setup, but I'm ready to talk about this. That's what I'm ready to do.
And we are going to get into that right now. So, Alizey, what do you feel about this episode?
I would actually give it a solid 7.5 because there were a few elements in the episode that just had me like jumping for joy, like Nymeria and Hot Pie, especially. I was just like, I've wanted to see them again for a long time, and there they were. So I'd give it a 7.5 for that. And I agree with everyone else. It was basically just exposition for the rest of the season. So
awesome. All right, so we're going to go the way we normally do, which is area by area, but I'd like to start with a philosophical debate. So we're going to start with what Theon did at the very end of this episode. I'm going to go ahead and lay out my opinions before we get down to it, but I think the gist of it is that everybody's initial reaction is that Theon is a coward and a failure and abandoned not only his people, but his sister to be left for dead. That's the apparent immediate reaction. Here is why what he did was the only option. A, he could not have won that battle. He looked around him and clearly his people were losing. They're cutting off tongues. You don't do that unless the battle has been won practically. But here's the main point. He could not have saved Yara, Asha, because Euron would have slit her throat, and if not, he wouldn't have let her go. And he had the axe up to her throat. So though Theon literally had some Reek throwbacks, and what a wonderful job he did with the acting, he had no other choice. Yes, it could have been because he was acting like a coward and was having a post-traumatic stress episode, but his choices were so limited that he could not have done anything else, in my opinion. I'm going to start with Niko. If you got some opinions on that, please go.
Well, what you said is, well, people's first reaction. I think this reaction is only because we have Twitter and we have memes. So this scene was a good meme material. Obviously, it's just for the laughs. You know, like the picture of Theon jumping off of the ship, and then like, this is the first picture of me dealing with my responsibilities. That was my favorite. But apart from that, I agree with everything you said. Yes, it was obviously just a post-traumatic episode. What I liked about it is that Euron knew which buttons to push. So this was obvious, and I mean it's just too obvious. I don't know what else to say on the topic. I mean, you're better at speaking than I am, so I will leave LaDonna to talk about it.
Got it. And you got a good point. He was calling him a cockless coward, and Euron is doing a great fucking job this season. Mom, what'd you think about what I just said?
Okay, well, first of all, I went to get a pen and paper because I had to take notes. All of what you all said. Yeah, he's got PTSD. We get that. And this is the same argument I make when people had the Battle of Bastards were in the chat saying, well, you know, why isn't Arya there? Well, what is Arya going to do in the Battle of the Bastards? I mean, she's just one little girl. You know, you guys, we don't have Superman coming in. Theon could have done nothing in that scene. I mean, if he went in and tried to help his sister, Euron would have slit her throat. And then he would have killed Theon. So, I mean, the only last hope for both of them is for him to jump ship, which mirrored him jumping off the wall at Winterfell with Sansa, and hope that Yara might live a little longer and maybe he could come back and save her. So, yeah, it's all interrelated. The other thing is it kind of mirrored when Robb got on his ass for trying to save Theon with the arrow in the very beginning with the wildlings. And Theon shot that arrow, and fortuitously, it did not go through Bran. It hit higher and killed that wildling. So, you know, all of this is coming full circle. So, yeah, we're disappointed in him. Yeah, he's got post-traumatic stress disorder, but yeah, there wasn't really much he could do. And I have to say, Euron really enthralled me. He's like a berserker, and that laugh was absolutely magnificent. Yeah, that's it.
And TeeBaby?
Okay, so I'm one of those people that called him a coward. And the only reason why I call him a coward is because you always hear these men talk about how they want to fight in glory and they want to die with honor. And here he has the opportunity to actually do it. I mean, I understand there was no way for him to win that. Just always hear these men always talking about how they're going to fight for honor and glory and give it their last swipe and all of this. And then when it goes back to like with said in season 1, like, you know, when you kill them, they kind of shit on themselves. So it's not really how it's not how they always think it should be. Now, when it comes to Theon, I agree with you. He did exactly what he did when he was in Winterfell with Sansa, but I'm going to take it even further. He started regressing back to Reek down in the cabin, and he was being a servant, and she was actually, and it was interesting because that conversation told you exactly what's going to happen the next scene. She was like, oh, he's going to be my protector and my advisor. And then she's like, oh, really? And she says, well, what is he doing all the way over there? Boom, same thing that happened. Then he says, oh, well, I'm coming in. Still doesn't do anything. She just like, and the exact thing happened. So I think he was regressing way before the whole little Theon thing. I think that's what just really snapped. And the only thing he thought of was, and that's, I have to jump. I don't even think he was thinking about saving his sister. I think he was too caught up, because remember when she tried to save him before, like he bit her and all of that. And I think I looked at that scene before, because at first, like she said jump, but she didn't. She looked disgusted, like he betrayed me again. Like, I can't believe he did it again. But I definitely agree with the jumping with Winterfell, because once he did that, I was like, because he did that with Sansa. I'm sure if his sister was close enough to him, that he would have took her hand and just forced her to jump like he did Sansa. And one thing I know is, like, people always say, how did they not see Euron and all of that? If you think about it, when they crept up, it was silent. It actually reminds you of the Night King, where he says he brings the storm, and Euron says he is the storm. So when the whole thing where it says Stormborn, I thought that it was because it makes you think like they're going to talk about Dany, but it was really about Euron, because he brings storm and all that stuff. But that's the only 2 cents I have with that. I like the fact that, you know, the guy was mute. So I don't know if we have some mute, because he didn't say anything, just shook his head. But I did enjoy it. But I still think he's a coward. But I understand why he's a coward, if that makes any sense.
That makes complete sense. The idea that he, it may be the most logical choice, but it's also the choice of a coward. And that's totally to be juxtaposed with what the Greyjoys are meant to be. They fight despite the fact that they're going to lose. That's kind of what they do. And he is not doing that. Alizey, what you think?
I kind of agree that he was, yes, he was cowardly in jumping, but I think the PTSD element can't be discounted here. I think really that's the story they're telling with Theon right now. And I don't think when he jumped, I don't think it was Theon who jumped. I think it was Reek who jumped specifically. And right before he jumps, you see shots of close-up carnage, really, of people cutting out tongues, people just like scalping each other. And that really like shows what Theon was honing in on in his mind. And he sees that, he's thinking, Ramsay, this is what he did to me, this is what the Boltons did, and his first instinct is, I can't let this happen to me again, so he jumps. And I think, I also agree that the only tactical thing he could have done in that situation was to jump, because if he had made a move towards Yara, he would have, Euron would have slit her throat for sure. And we don't really know, because Yara wasn't really as useful to Euron as Ilaria and Tyene. Because obviously, oh, sorry, it's not really obvious. I think that, to go on a little tangent, I'm pretty sure that Euron's entire mission in attacking their ships was to bring Ilaria and Tyene to Cersei. So Yara was kind of an afterthought there. He could have just killed her off easily. And I think because Theon jumped and it kind of took Euron off guard and he laughed, he didn't kill Yara, I'm pretty sure. So and with the protector line where she was talking about how Theon was going to be a protector, I think the key line there was when Ilaria said, looks like you don't need a protector, because now Yara is essentially on her own in trying to protect her and Ilaria and Tyene from getting killed in the future or tortured. And we don't know what Cersei's going to do to them. So sorry if I went way off.
No, that's not way off. That's fucking perfect. She's never done this before. You do fantastic. She mentioned something to me earlier that I had not considered. Valancourt means younger brother, but considering that we now know that Prince that was promised is Prince or Princess, it's possible the younger brother also means younger sister. We don't know that, but that's a fair point. And Yara's the older sister, though, isn't she? Yeah, Yara's older. She remembers Theon being a little baby. But yeah, so Yara and a couple of stand stakes are now captured. So let's just do that scene in its entirety. So you end up with, you've got the three, Yara, Ilaria, and or Elia. Ilaria? Ilaria. Yara, Ilaria, and Theon in the room. Theon is clearly subservient to Yara. Ilaria is hitting on Yara. I thought that the scenes that were done with the Dornish were well scripted and performed really well, and that includes the young girls. Yes, they come off a little annoying, mama, but that's kind of the point, that they're 3 kids who are badasses who are fucking around. Then we get the silence coming out of nowhere. There's a little issue with how are they able to go to that specific ship. That said, I think that there is probably a way to tell which ship's in charge so they can signal to each other. I loved the underbelly of the ships being rammed into each other. I absolutely loved the clamp down of the Euron silence ship, and having Euron on that thing when I can't say it enough. Euron last season didn't seem to be very powerful. This season, I think they're doing a great job of making him this passionate. He's stealing what she said after the episode, what Alizey said. But if anybody here plays D&D, he is clearly a barbarian in his fight scenes, meaning that he rages right as he's fighting, which gives him advantages on some attack rolls, but an extra attack, I believe, actually. So I would like to rage, but what a great job he did. And we get the Sand Snakes fighting with him, so that's 2 out of 3 gone. And the one that survives was the sexy one, the one that's her talent, is the allure of her. And now that Ilaria and that girl are captured, Ilaria said, "Please kill us now," and the guys were like, "Nope." That could mean, rape is clearly an issue in these books and in real life, and thus in these books and television show. The best way to torture Ilaria is to have her daughter tortured in front of her one way or another. Clearly she's the gift, and I loved the fight scenes. I thought they were really well done on second viewing. On first viewing, I have an issue watching fight scenes that are up close, because I think that though you get to see the facial expressions more, it seems it's easier to cut. More difficult to tell what's going on when you cut from one close-up to another close-up. I prefer it to be further back, but on second viewing, there was a lot of further back. It's harder to choreograph that. When the camera's further back and you have everybody fighting all at once, everybody has to be on point for it to work. Sorry, I'm blocking you with my hand. So it's a lot more difficult to do that. I loved Yara seeing all the destruction of the ships and realizing that her power is now being stripped, let alone her own freedom. Theon was fighting. Theon was fighting in those scenes, and that's the first time we really see him fight, really ever. So I thought that was extremely well done. And again, I think that him on his choice was both a PTSD and a there's no other choice situation. I think that it was the shame. Who the hell knows? And we're getting inside their minds. It ain't the books, so we can't just get inside their minds. It felt to me like it was his calculation and his fear, which is a natural thing, that resulted in his decision, and his decision resulted in shame, and the shame is what made him revert. Maybe I'm not really Theon. Maybe I really am Reek. So what do y'all, let's just approach this scene in its entirety, and we'll go to another scene in a minute. Mama, what you think about all this?
Okay, well, first of all of you made great points on this so far, and I'm sure y'all will continue to do so. I would like to back up for just a moment about Theon. Remember that his sister made the same choice when she tried to get him out of Ramsay's cages. She realized he was a lost cause, and she was really in there trying to save him. But ultimately she decided, and she told her shipmates when she got back in, Theon is dead. So, you know, it kind of was the same choice in a different environment. I do think Theon is going to come back. I hope Yara doesn't die. And all this stuff about being a hero and jumping into the fray and dying, you know, we've talked about this on the show. I mean, the show has talked about it. What good is being a hero? I mean, even Rob said, yeah, they died, but nobody's going to sing about them. The point is to survive.
and you might come back and actually make an impact later. I'll give you an example. If I had a child who ran out in the street and a car was coming, I would immediately go out there and save my child, even if I died. That's just the way it is. But there are moments in these epics where the impact of you as a person, as an individual, may be important later as a placeholder. And even Melisandre kind of said that you may have a place in the wars to come. So Theon, I'm not going to say he made the right choice. He made the choice that was going to happen in the present time, and I think it was the right one for us in this epic adventure, narratively. Now, with respect to Jorah, Ellaria, and Tyene, first of all, Euron did a great job. I loved him. He was a berserker. Oh my God, when that ramp came down, with him holding onto it, fan-fucking-tastic. And his laughter when Theon jumped overboard was just, it wasn't like Arya's existential laugh at the Vale when she finds out her family is all dead, but it was similar to, it was like, it doesn't matter what the universe has to give to me. I'm going to take whatever is going to come. With respect to Ellaria and Tyene, yeah, James and I talked about this. She is the gift. Ellaria is the gift, not Yara. Ellaria is the gift because she killed Myrcella. Tyene is the key in because Cersei, as she said to Septa Unella, now, not today. You're not going to die today. You're not going to die for quite some time. If you are a mother, father, parent, the worst thing you can happen in your life is not to die. The worst thing you can happen in your life is to watch your child be tortured forever. So there are going to be some terrible scenes of Ellaria, in my opinion, like chained up to a wall, watching Tyene be brutalized. But Bronn considers her the most beautiful woman in the world. And Jaime's still at King's Landing, and she is the bad pussy, as they said. I think that's ridiculous. But the connection is there between Bronn and she. So Bronn may very well come in and rescue Tyene. We'll see about that. There's some connection there. I mean, they didn't set it up for no reason. I think that the fact that the ship is a silence, and somebody in the chat or somebody on here mentioned that when Ellaria says, just kill us now, the man who looks at her goes, he can't talk. They're not going to kill her because they're going to save her later. But that was a reference to them having their tongues cut out, because in the books, Euron ship is called a silent, which can creep up on you, but it also has to do with him cutting the tongues out of everybody on board so that they can't tell anybody their plans or go against him. And that's all I have to say about that.
Lovely. And to add to what you're saying, to the silence, it's not been mentioned in the television show whether he's actually cut out the tongues of all the people on silence. That may have been what that cutting of the tongue of the defeated individual on the ship may have been a reference to, but we certainly haven't seen anybody talk on that ship yet. And I believe the people, I'm not 100% sure on this, but the people whose tongues he cut out, I'm not sure they were Greyjoys. They may have been, or whether they were slaves. But either way, they're certainly playing on that. Niko?
Okay, so I just wanted to say, I remember what I wanted to add after our introduction is when LaDonna said that they're going so fast. Well, actually, keep in mind that we're used to George Martin not writing books, and when he writes, it's a lot of text, so it's kind of different feeling. But I like that we're reaching the end finally. I want to see how the story ends. I don't care about Targaryens or whatever. I just want to know. I mean, the history of Targaryens. I want to know first the main story, and then we can talk about world building. Now, I wanted to add that this episode, and this is not my thoughts, this is what Claire said when we chatted after the episode. She said, did you notice that the episode begins and ends with a storm? So it's really, really cool thing to notice. It ties it all together. Now, I cannot not mention foreign invasion. I mean, to me, it's the equivalent of bad pussy. It's just, it was bad. It was bad. I did not like it, but I don't care. I also want to add that the sand snakes, just like we had last episode, they were impaled. So it's like their sigil, their house sigil. She was impaled on the, I don't know in English how to say this, front part of the ship. But I mean, who knows these nautical things anyway? But you I think you know what I mean. And tell me.
A cow.
Okay.
Cow of the ship. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
PROW.
I also wanted to ask all of you. I did not pay attention at the episode. So we have one sand snake alive, right? Apart from Ilaria. Ilaria is not a sand snake. She's just the paramour.
Unless they bring in Ariane, but she's not technically a sand snake.
Yeah, she's the heir. So are all the sand snakes killed? The three girls, or am I
No,
thought that they killed two.
Ilaria's daughter is still alive.
Okay. Now there are two more things I want to add. It's just quick, like observations. What she said, Elsa. What did you say your name was? I'm sorry, Elsa. James.
Alizey.
Alizey. Okay. I really liked your input on the Theon scenes, and I agree with you. And you actually said, well, you didn't say it like this, but I loved how the actor acted this scene. Well, you can actually see on his face the transformation from Theon to Reek. So he did some bloody good acting there. And the last thing I want to add is I loved Euron's bloodied face. He was just mad, just completely mad. So we'll see. Yeah, I agree, Lana, that we know what the gift is, and I don't think that Cersei is gonna. Well, she's gonna. I don't know. I want to ask you: is she gonna be like, "Oh wow, cool, that's a cool gift," or like, "Okay, I'm gonna torture this woman, but like you have to prove yourself more"? What do you think her reaction is gonna be? Is it gonna be enough for Cersei? And where will Theon end up? Because he's floating there, so I don't know, depending on where they were at the time, right, where the ships were, because we don't have any sense where the location of the ships is. So that is I'm sorry if I talk too much. Thank you for listening to me.
You definitely were talking too much, and everybody needs to quit thinking that, as long as we're talking about Game of Thrones. So a couple things. The sand snakes, they showed the ship with Obara, the spear girl, with a spear through her on the prow of the ship, and they showed the one with the whip hung from the prow. The other sand snake and Ilaria were captured. So I wanted to put that out there. As far as the ships, Euron's ships were at King's Landing last we saw, and we know that Yara and them were leaving from Dragonstone to go to Sunspear. So thank you. So they're somewhere between Dragonstone and Sunspear. Theon could wash up on Dragonstone. He could wash up on near Sunspear. There's obviously spoiler alert, in the trailer, there's somebody washing up on a shore that looks a lot like Theon or Euron, and that's likely them. So, and you can't tell where they are, but it looks a lot like Dragonstone. It was just a beach with a rock in the background, if I recall correctly. So it looked like Euron must have just simply waited for them to show up. And if his ships are black, and as long as they're not talking, it's like, what the hell is that movie? Is it Das Boot, where the submarine has to remain completely silent, everybody in the ship, because any noise could be heard through the water. I liked Foreign Invasion. I'm still on your time, TeeBaby. I liked the Foreign Invasion scene for a couple of different reasons. One was I just thought it was funny. First of all, it's nice to see lesbians in television show. They're both bisexual apparently, but it's nice to see that interaction be treated as just a natural thing. They're flirting and they're both horny, and neither of them is looking for a long-term relationship. So I also liked the scene because it showed Theon's subservience. not just subserviences and fealty as the Greyjoy army did to Yara. They all respect Yara, so they follow Yara. But it also, serves Ellaria a beer. Greyjoys would not have done that. It was also important to see Yara stand up for Theon. You don't, something to the extent of he's not yours to order around, but Theon's response is, I don't mind. That is a result, and he would not have done that, the former Theon, neither would the Greyjoys. That's not what they do. You get your own goddamn beer. But I think that was an important scene for that, and it foreshadowed Theon jumping off the ship. That's his mentality is different than the Greyjoys. He's not as much of a fierce warrior. So that's what I wanted to add to what you were saying. TeeBaby, what you think?
Sorry, y'all know I hate that mute button. You guys all made really good points, so I don't want to repeat. One thing that I noticed is that, like I said, what this episode seemed to do is they seemed to show us what was about to happen. So same scene where you had Theon and the whole foreign invasion thing, for that you had the sand snakes and they were talking to each other. And they kept saying, "Oh, I don't want that. I want the mountain." And they was, and just the bad pussy chick. She says, or I could kill both of you and have them for myself. A foreshadowing thing, but they definitely died within the next scene. So definitely agreed that the gift is the sand snake and Illyria, because scene in season 4 when they sent her a gift and it was Marcella's necklace was a gift. So that's why I thought it wasn't Tyrion, but I thought that they were alluring to that person. As far as I definitely thought it was the mute thing, so I was excited about that because I was trying to pay attention to see if I heard like people that looked like it was on his side yelling or anything, but I just couldn't tell. But I love the fact that he's super crazy this season and how if you can tell it, and I keep referencing the Night's King because it seems like it's the same tactic. Remember in episode 1 when Storm came and you only saw kind of like one person, then you start to see a few other people. Same thing with Euron. It's like you didn't see his boat until it was too late and he was already jumping down. Because you know how like most of the these armies, they will like make war cries and beat on the drums to let you know they're coming, and he uses the environment and just sneaks in. Once again, when I forgot who made the point about this, it started with the storm and ended with the storm, but when I thought of that, it seems like Euron was close and he was the storm, and that's what got them. He used what environment. The fact that they weren't alert about that seemed off to me, but then I know a lot of people were like, well, how come they didn't clash against each other? They didn't see. I think Euron saw them, but they didn't see him. I think someone had to see someone. It's impossible that no one saw each other. I definitely think he saw them, and that's why he already knew, like, I'll come back with a gift. As far as Cersei, I'm interested about if she'll accept his gift because she knows exactly what he wants. But I feel like she's about to be in a situation where she's going to have more than one suitors trying to be king, because I think Tarly's going to play a position in that. But I know we'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's all I really have to say, because we already kind of touched on Theon and his whole situation. Like I said, I think he was turning to Reek way before like the whole snapping of when he said Lil Theon. Yes, I think I talked about everything, but and also one thing is that I know that when it comes to fighting scenes, sometimes you miss it, but that's why I love the fighting scenes. I wish the fighting scene was a little bit, I think I'm just spoiled because I'm so used to it, but I have a feeling we're going to see that next episode.
Great point.
Just may I add one more thing?
The reason we keep people muted is because there's an echo sometimes in background stuff. So thank y'all. So
James?
Yes, ma'am.
May I just say something?
Yeah.
I did not. I like the seduction and everything. I don't have problem with it. I myself was wild back in the day, if you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like the line for an invasion. Only this line. It was just like a line, bed pussy. It was just bad. But
I got it, and like I said, I thought it was perfect. Although there's a campiness to it, that was kind of the point of it. It's funny. There's a foreign invasion going on right now, but I get what you're saying. It feels like it takes you out. So a couple things to add to that before Alizey goes. I forgot to mention that one of the cool things about it's not just that there's a lesbian scene. It's or treating homosexuality or bisexuality as a normal thing. Which if you're not going to take shit from anybody, then you can do whatever the fuck makes you you, which Yara certainly is, and Alaria certainly is. But it's also the dichotomy of masculinity versus femininity, because though it's just in so many different ways, that scene, Ilaria is the one that initiates the sexual interaction. Neither of them are male, so depending on who it is, she's not coy. She's witty and romantic, but not coy. And I love Yar going, what do you want me to do? But another flip of that is that Ilaria is not a fighter. When the ship gets bombed, Yara straight up tells Ilaria, stay here. That's a stereotypical thing for a man to do. Stay here. Yara did it. So I thought that was really cool. She even, when she gets upstairs, tells Tyene, go protect your mom. I thought that was that kind of stuff is extremely important. You mentioned Euron being different in the show. Paul Wilson made a good point that's been talked about a lot online, that they've really mixed Euron and Victarion. Euron's more of a sexualized, pirate-y figure. He's very attractive in the books, but in a mysterious, dangerous sort of way. And they've mixed him with Victarion, who is a barbarian outright, not charismatic, simply powerful and dumb, to be honest. But the actor who plays Euron said, and Paul Wilson said that in the comments about Euron and Victarion, but Euron, the actor, specifically said that he thought that Euron should be different depending on who he is talking to or what he is doing in the moment, which is what a charismatic person would do. You adapt to your situation. I think D&D now. I only started playing D&D recently. I love the hell out of it, but I cannot watch these episodes without thinking about the roles that are going on. Euron is charismatic as fuck. And when he's talking to Cersei, he's saying, I wanted to marry the most beautiful woman in the world. We know that's fucking horseshit on multiple levels. First of all, he's lying. But B, she's not the most beautiful girl in the world. But Cersei likes hearing that. She even smirked in that scene. So anyway, the actor said that he thought that should be part of what Euron is. So a lot of people have been talking about it. It's been mentioned in the comments. The first person to mention it tonight was Johnny Oggs. But Euron got stabbed in that fight. So there's a question as to whether he was poisoned during that stab. I don't know one way or another, but that's certainly worth considering. He certainly got stabbed in that scene, and they made a point of showing it. I have two questions that'll follow after Alizey goes. So Alizey, what do you think about that scene?
I think the thing that stuck out to me the most about that scene, and that made me kind of really like Euron as a character, despite all the flaws they're going to show us, and I'm sure there's going to be many more, he led the charge. He was the first one on the enemy ship, and that kind of like takes you back to Stannis, like sort of a king that's really in it with his people and actually in the thick of the battle. Rather than someone like Cersei, who would rather send Euron to do it. And the other thing that stuck out to me that I felt was a little shaky is that they really emphasized that the Sand Snakes are, self-reliant. They're very good fighters. So why isn't Ilaria? Why doesn't Ilaria know how to defend herself when she already knows how to poison people, how to scheme? Shouldn't she be an able fighter if her daughter is? And that just kind of stuck out to me as a thing that didn't quite add up. Because otherwise we see Ilaria as quite a strong and self-reliant woman as well. So you'd think she would know how to fight even with a dagger at least. That's really all I had to think. And I also I've also noticed that they seem to be folding Victarion into Euron's character. And what makes that interesting is that before we saw this scene where Euron arrives, which is now what I think his gift was, I was kind of assuming that it was going to be the Horn of Joramun, and that they were going to bring the horn into the story somehow, because that's the whole thing in the books with Euron and Victarion. So I think there's still a use for the horn in the storyline. So there's still a potential that maybe Cersei will be like, this isn't enough. I love vengeance, and thanks for giving me this great gift that's perfect for me. But I need more. I need something that will actually help me win the battle. Although this technically, I mean, this was a swift way to turn the tide towards Cersei. And really good tactical move on Euron's part. And you kind of wonder how he knew that the ship was going to be going towards Sunspear. I think there's still a chance that Euron is going to come across the horn and use it in the fight against the White Walkers eventually. I really think that that's an important plot device. So I don't think that they're going to completely let go of it. But we'll see.
Those are great freaking points. So I'm going to respond to her real quick and pose these two questions, and then we'll go through the line one more time, focusing on the scene, and then we'll move to the next one. So in my just generally responding to a couple of things you said, my thoughts on it. To me, the explanation for Arya not being a good fighter is the reason the Sand Snakes are good fighters is because their father is Oberyn. Oberyn made them train. They each had their own training abilities or focuses. But Arya was not raised that way. Arya was raised as a bastard, which is given more respect, but she didn't have the access to the training that nobility could have. That's my excuse for it. Oberyn is the reason his daughters are trained, and we have that specifically referenced with Obara, and Obara being given a choice as a child. You can choose tears as your weapon or a spear as your weapon, and she chose a spear. Regarding the horn, this is a more hypothetical, so I don't know this at all. One of the main issues with those kind of things is that we don't know their relevance yet. We know that they're part of the storyline in the books, but we don't know why they're in there. Let me propose a possibility. First of all, they may be a crux of this story. And I certainly think it's not going to just disappear. Something's going to happen with the horn. But I think that it is important for Martin. There's the idea of Chekhov's gun. Which for those watching, y'all probably know already, but it's the idea that if you see a major plot device introduced in a book, it will come up later. It's not just in there for the sake of some specific event. It's important later. That said, Martin, it's important that be obvious, that be manipulated in a book of an epic size, because you want the reader to be uncertain. You don't want something to happen and the readers to go, okay, let me remember that, because that's gonna be important later. You want to throw them off the path, and Martin specifically does that with main characters' deaths. He wants us to be fearful of every character's potential death, because otherwise we're just going to presume everybody's going to live, like Lord of the Rings. And it was the first of its kind, really. You got Ivanhoe and some similar medieval books, but there's just kind of an understanding that they're going to all survive. Boromir dies, and you have the tainting of the ring, but ultimately everybody survives. Martin goes out of his way to make it so that the readers do not know what's going to happen, and it would be important in that way for certain items to be the antithesis of a Chekhov's gun, in order to make it so that when Dawn shows up later, we go, holy shit, this is actually an important thing. In order to make us feel that surprise, there need to be items that are not significant. I don't know that, but that would be my proposal. That said, even if it is significant, cutting it out of the storyline of the show may just be a fact that they just want to cut certain stuff out. I gotta quit moving my hands because they're blocking you. So my big two questions before we do this one more time and then move on to the next is, number one, will Cersei marry Euron by the end of the season? And if so, will it be because of the gift? I'm of the opinion that she absolutely will marry Euron because of the foreshadowing of her. She told Tywin, I'm not some broodmare. She can't have children anymore, which in my opinion is going to be relevant to this. I base that on Qyburn giving her some medication that he said have the symptoms abated. She said yes. That's in my opinion because she was going through menopause. We've talked about that previously. But she will marry Euron, in my opinion, and it will be very, very soon. And that's going to cause Jaime some harsh issues. That's the reason why we needed Euron showing up first before he produced the gift, so that we're uncertain whether she'll accept it or not. She straight up says she wouldn't. The second question is, what will Euron do with Yara? We can all presume, I think, justifiably, that Ilaria and TeeBaby said that Tyene was the wrong name, and I can't remember what that Sandstake's name was, so I'll have to look that up real quick. I know that that's an easy thing, but I've forgotten. It's Obara, Tyene, and another one. So whichever one survived, her and Ilario are clearly the gifts to Cersei. Yara, on the other hand, there's really no tie between Cersei and Yara. No reason for that to be a gift, particularly for her. On the other hand, the Greyjoy, to Euron, there's a lot of benefits he can do with Yara. I can't think of what he'll actually do, but in my opinion, Yara is not going to be part of the gift. That's something that Euron will benefit from directly, rather than have Cersei do. So we'll go around one more time. Mama, what you think about those two questions, and you got any responses?
Oh my God, you hit so many issues. Allow me to say this. First of all, he doesn't have anything with respect to Yara, except that her connection is with Theon, who is the real true leader of the Pike Ironborn. So it's about Theon. So leave that out of it. Her name is Tyene. Let's just stop that shit. Nymeria died, and so did Obara. That's it. It's Tyene. Tyene is the only daughter of Ilaria. The other two kids are from other parents. So let's just clear that up. It's Tyene. Tyene's the one that's a bad pussy related to Bronn. Period. Cersei's going to torture Tyene in front of Ilaria, and hopefully Bronn will come save her. That's it. Will she marry Euron? Probably. Unless she gets rid of him and gets the Iron Fleet, or his fleet. But we'll see. I mean, looks like they're going to marry. Foreign invasion was an interesting little tidbit, because we got a lot of foreign invasions going on. We got the Night's King coming in. Everybody's foreign invading. This is the world. I mean, when everybody starts getting really supremacist or racist or whatever, it's so fascinating, because all these DNA tests now show that we're all so interrelated. I mean, my brother did one recently that showed we were everything. I mean, we were Vikings. We were Eastern Europe. You know, foreign invasion. I love it that they threw it in there, because we're everything. Go get a DNA test if you want to act really, not you, and I'm not being arrogant. I'm just saying, if you think you are something, get a DNA test. It may shock you. With respect to that horn, Euron would not have given Victarion that horn unless it was bullshit. Okay? Euron would never have given something up that was powerful. So that horn was a red herring. Now, the horn that Sam found in that cache of dragonglass up north, and don't argue with me, there was a horn in there. He cast it aside and thought the dragonglass was more important. That horn might be important. And if you look at the covers of the books, there is a horn on one of the paperback covers. That horn might be important. But you know what? I mean, we haven't seen any of it in the show, so it all might be a red herring. I want to say this about Chekhov's gun. And again, I don't mean to sound super educated or whatever. Chekhov's gun means this. Anton Chekhov was one of the most premier Russian playwrights ever. He's still being performed on Broadway. What it means is that if you put something on stage that's smoking, not necessarily smoking. Alfred Hitchcock did this with bombs under the table that were ticking, 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 and might not actually go off. It creates a sense of suspense that it might happen or it might not. But if you put it on the stage, you better, by God, deal with it one way or the other. That is Chekhov's gun. using the sea, I think that was really interesting, Alizey, because, you know, Euron's using the sea as an elemental force to go where he's going silently. And as we talked about last time, the Night's King is silently making his way around now that the sea has frozen next to Eastwatch by the Sea. And if anybody wants to argue with me, go compare the opening cuts of Game of Thrones where Eastwatch by the Sea is surrounded by ocean. It's not now. It's surrounded by frozen sea. So I could go on and on, but that's all I want to say about that. Thanks.
Got it. And just to clarify something real quick regarding Hitchcock, what Hitchcock said was that if you have people in a room and there's a bomb under the table and everybody's talking and the bomb goes off, boom, it's a shock, but for a split second. But if you want to create suspense, you tell the audience the bomb's under the table, and then you see how long you can keep it going until the bomb goes off. That's the anticipation. Bomb goes off, okay, bomb went off, that's a plot device. But if you tell the audience the bomb's there, now you've created suspense. I also wanted to say, you're muted, Mama. So the horn, I've always thought it would be funny if the horn was blown by somebody simultaneously. Either the wall comes down, a horn is blown by somebody, and simultaneously either the wall comes down or something happens with the dragons. And the point is that it will appear as if the horn caused it. So the history books will write it as if the horn did it. And I don't know, but I think that would be a cool plot device to show how histories are fucked up based on what happens. The other thing I wanted to say is my mom mentioned this, and I just want to reiterate so she remembers. If Euron marries Cersei, though he complimented her in order to make it happen, he is going to rape her and insult her, call her old and ugly and stupid and etc. And it's going to be worse comparatively to what she went through with Robert, who was in love with somebody else. All right, Niko.
I'm sorry, I missed your questions. I have this thing. I don't know if this is just digression, but when I eat apples or pears, I forgot that it also happens with pears. The first minute after I eat it, I get like, I'm in agony. My stomach just reacts, and then I'm okay. So I missed your questions. Your questions were something regarding Cersei, right?
Yeah, the question was, will Cersei marry Euron and win in the episodes? And what will Euron do with Yara?
I think Euron is keeping Yara for himself. Because Cersei, she doesn't give a fuck about her. I don't know, she doesn't know her. She's not considering her a threat or anything. Will they marry? You mean like a ceremony, a proper marriage? That's a funny question, like I want to say yes, but maybe something will happen. Maybe, I mean, she wants his ships, but I'm really, that's the thing. Like when I think about it as a book reader and as a show watcher, it's the same. It's like he's introducing these characters, and I mean, this Greyjoy is like, what the fuck? It's just Lovecraft in a nutshell or whatever. But I don't know. I think there's an expiration date on Greyjoys, and I think Yara will survive in the end, because there has to be somebody, as we spoke like last episode or in the pre-game show, the show that we had before the first episode aired. There has to be somebody left in the end. So I think it's going to be Yara, actually. But Euron, are they going to marry? Well, probably they're going to do something like just, say the vows and that's it. But I would really like them to just disappear, because I don't see the point of Greyjoys. Like, you can invent so many characters. There's only so many characters you can invent. You're just repeating yourself. Then it's like, it's too much. It's just too. It's not necessary for the story, in my opinion. Maybe somebody will disagree or prove me wrong. I'm open to that, of course. But I hope you're understanding what I'm trying to say. It's just like, get it over with. Like, it's complicated enough. You don't have to make more complex story to make it sound more deep. That's the problem that I have in these books. So, you know, like you can read a 100-page story and it's going to be very, very deep and get you to thinking. But like, if you need to write and introduce new characters and complexities and relationships, it's just like, oh God, stop it already. So I don't like rages. I don't know. So thank you.
TeeBaby?
Okay, sorry. Once again, I hate that mute button. I wish I could pay it.
Quit
I
saying
was
you
paying
need everybody,
attention.
we know, but we got to do it.
Oh no, I'm just saying it takes forever. It's not saying to you. It's just me talking to the mute button. Anywho, so Euron marrying Cersei. I do see that. However, I think that what's going to possibly happen is that Charlie, if he does, you know, join Cersei's side, I don't think that Highgarden would be enough for him to want to. I think that he might be looking at his son saying, look, I can have my son be a king. Because we heard in the, what was it, last season when he was talking about Sam and talking about like, you rather be someone that writes about someone greater men and stuff like that. So he always sees his house as a mighty house. And I don't think that enough for him to portray his name and his family's name and the honor that he talked, because he threw that back at Jaime. Not trying to go too far into that scene, but we're going to see is that Cersei is going to be in a position where decide to marry Euron, going to look at her funny and say, these are rapers, these are people who, you know, will go and steal our land and children, all that. It wouldn't be a good move on her behalf to just marry Euron. However, she does need Euron, and Euron, I think it's going to come down to who gives Cersei the most power. That's where she's going to aim for it. Most likely, I can see it be Euron, but I can't now put Tarly aside just because of that whole conversation he had with Jaime. I didn't get the second question you asked.
What will Euron do with?
Oh, he's definitely probably going to torture her. I think. Yeah, I can see him torturing her, doing something like that. I think because see him giving Yara to Cersei, but he might just give her as a bonus, saying, hey, you thought I was just going to get, you know, a Dorn, and I got this person. I'm just giving you more than you expected. But surviving only because it goes back to Ramsay and Rickon, that this person is alive, you are a threat to my claim. So he might be doing the same thing where he'll use her as a pawn to, you know, lure out Theon, because Theon, he left him. He didn't just go back to finish him off. So I think he might be thinking of doing something sadistic with Theon. That's a possibility. Have when it comes to Theon and that whole situation, I can see Cersei actually Euron, but I think it's going to be a forced situation.
That is definitely a possibility, and that goes way deeper than I think you bring up a deep point. Alizey?
The way I see this going, there's two options here that Euron will give Yara to Cersei, which almost seems too nice because he knows that Cersei doesn't care about Yara that much. I think what we're going to see is worse than what we're really expecting, or at least what I'm expecting him to like show, like the rapey side when it comes to Yara, because in the books there's that heavy implication that he raped his brothers. I think in the show like this, they're not going to run away from that when they can make this character as evil as they can. And they want to differentiate him from Ramsay and from Joffrey. So, you know, we haven't really seen a rapey uncle that much. And I just, like, I feel like that's going to be the more harrowing option for what he could do to her. And that's probably the route they're going to take. Because if he were to just, cut her, whatever, she's a Greyjoy. She's been in battles before. It's not going to take away her pride and her dominating sense of self. She's very, she has to be aggressive to be a woman in her society. And I think, I don't want to see this, but I think we're going to see her kind of being broken down the same way that Sansa was, and come back stronger. What is dead may never die, but rises again harder and stronger. So I know we haven't seen much of damp hair at all, but I think we'll see like elements of that relationship in his relationship with Yara.
That is a fantastic point. That is a fantastic point, and they have not alluded to that yet. Regarding the breaking down of Yara, you mentioned Sansa, but when you said that, I thought Reek. Wouldn't that be a good, an interesting comparison for Yara to be telling Theon, if you're not going to man up, then go fucking kill yourself. But then for Yara to face the same kind of different kind of torture, but same kind of choice. So that's pretty much, let's move on. So, and again, we can always talk about what we talked about before. Let's focus specifically on King's Landing now. There's not a whole lot that happened at King's Landing, but we definitely got some stuff. So we got Cersei and the Scorpion, the Ballista. That's definitely something we need to talk about. God, Qyburn has got some fantastic ideas when it comes to really fucking other people up. So the wildfire situation, and now that. I think it is a great point, and Alizey mentioned this off camera to me, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up. A great point that's an ancient relic. I mean, that is the biggest dragon that's ever been around, and they destroyed it. I mean, they didn't destroy it, but they shot right through it. You see the skull crack a little bit. How fucked up is that? 100 years generation from now, they're already in a basement. If somebody went down there and smashed them, what evidence they had that dragons existed at all? So we got that scene. I'm not in the Princess and the Queen. One of the dragons gets shot down on the sea. A spear hits it, and the spear, a ballista, and the ballista is attached to the ship. And the dragon, it rips the side of the dragon, and it slams the dragon into the water, and it is never seen again, and it pulls the ship down with it. So it's been done before. And if you want to know what ability to kill dragons exists, the Princess and the Queen is our easiest reference point. So they're susceptible to fire if the fire is hot enough, and a larger, hotter dragon can do that. If we have a whited dragon, which would also be an ice dragon, then we don't know what power exists back and forth between that. I do believe a dragon's going to be killed. It has to, in order for there to be a whited dragon. Not sure which one, but I'm of the opinion that the reason we got this scene, and talking about Martin obfuscating stuff, if it were actually the ballista, I mean, we've already seen it, so it seems like no shit. Whereas the wildfire was done in secret. Is the rumor true? Oh yes, much more. By showing it to us, that makes me feel like that really is just to show us the dragons can be taken down. I'm of the opinion that the scene in the trailer where Jaime is charging with a lance on a field of fire is him killing a dragon. I talked about this last episode, but what a great obfuscation of a fable of a knight, a noble knight killing a dragon for the sake of a princess, being his sister. So we also got Jaime and Cersei talking to lords, some of which were under the Tyrells, and specifically Sam's dad, Randyll Tarly, who is a great military genius. My mom mentioned this, so I'm going to play it up a little bit, and she can talk about it in a second. But what a beautiful thing for Randyll Tarly to look at Jaime and say, "I swore an oath," and Jaime says, Randyll says, "I swore an oath to the Tyrells," and the Tarly name means something, which was really up his character's alley. And Jaime says, you also swore an oath to the kingdom, so you owe us fealty as well. And he says, I've known Olenna since I was a child. I thought Jaime missed a good opportunity here to say, okay, you swore an oath, but you swore 2 oaths, number one. Number two, and this goes a little bit deeper, so stick with me. Jaime could have said, Olenna is all that's left of the Tyrells. She can't have children, and she is going to die eventually. There's nothing left for the Tyrells to take. The reason he shouldn't say that is because the exact same thing is true of Cersei and Jaime, the Lannisters. But I think that was a missed opportunity. Another thing I wanted to add to this scene is, and this was completely apparent, in the same way that you get the scene where Aemon Targaryen on the wall, the Maester, says to Sam, a Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing, and Jon enters the room and it focuses on Jon. We got the exact same cut in this episode because Jaime swears to Randall, or tells Randall, basically, if you join us when Olenna's gone, I will try to get Cersei to give you the Reach. It's the Reach, right? High Garden. This scene immediately cuts to Sam. I can think of no better person to run the area, and it cuts to Sam. That we have got to give a lot of credence to what that might possibly mean, that Sam may be in charge of it, or it will totally be up to the Citadel, that it will be a learned place, and a place of education. I don't know for sure. All right, so let's go around and see what some thoughts are. Mama Jamma?
I don't even know where you start this conversation. Because we've talked about so many different things.
No, we didn't. We talked about King's Landing. Sam was only mentioned because the scene got cut. We were talking about King's Landing, Jaime and Cersei.
All right, with respect to Cersei and Qyburn, the ballista is a great weapon, and I'm proud that he's an engineer who learned a whole lot of things at the Citadel, but it's going to take a lot to make that thing hit a moving target in the right place. So I'm not sure that isn't a red herring. So we'll just leave that there. I do want to say that Qyburn and Sam are both now anarchists from the Citadel, doing things that are against what the Citadel's rules are. So at any rate, I want to talk about Jaime with Tarly. I thought that was the better scene. With respect to the fossil being broken, that's kind of like the when conquerors go in and they take down the images and the statues and things like that. It's anathema to us. We've watched that in the Middle East and seen them do that, and we think, oh, you heathens and berserkers. We've done the same thing with the Native Americans. Every conqueror does that stuff. And I had major problems when Dany brought down the Harpy, and the Harpy slid down that pyramid, and then it was like a dragon where one wing was broken. And remember, that was the foreshadowing. One wing of the Harpy was broken. There's going to be a dragon that dies. I'm not going to get into spoilers. I think I might know who it is. There's going to be a dragon that's going to die. It doesn't matter if it's spoilers or not. A dragon's going to die. My question is, what will that dragon do? First of all, Jaime's not bringing it down, at least right now, because that battle we've seen is too close to King's Landing. And in order for that dragon to be whited, the Night King has to be closer. So that's not happening yet. That dragon has to be brought down closer to where the Night King is for it to be whited. Having said that, when that dragon does come down, and there will be a dragon that comes down, how does his fire breathing then affect the scene? He can't breathe fire now, and he shouldn't, because if he is a whited dragon, the fire would be a threat to the whites. So what does he do? I mean, does he freeze people? What is his breath? What does his breath do? I don't know. Think about it. Back to the Tarly Jaime scene. I really like that interpersonal scene. It's about Jaime and vows and what do vows mean and all that kind of thing. And I don't think Tarly has ever been confronted with what vows do mean. This goes back to his relationship with Sam. I mean, Sam was a different kind of son. It wasn't the son he wanted. His son had his own kind of code. It was a gentle code. It was a learning code. It was a love for his family code. Tarly is a conqueror, a military man. So I'll be curious whether or not, I think Martin would be remiss if there was not some major narrative about Sam and his father coming perhaps to full circle, and his father realizing that maybe his tactic was not completely correct and that maybe he should give great respect to Sam. And I think that does make perfect sense. It's going to be a while before we see that. And, ultimately, Jaime's promise will be Highgarden. But is that really what he wants? We've seen that Tarly's home is a major fortress. It's the best of the best. I mean, wouldn't we want to live there? What does he really want Highgarden? And his wife, who is lovely, is going to be in his ear. Remember, they've been married for years. His wife is not a pansy. She's going to be in his ear going, what the fuck are you doing? So I love those dynamics, and I think that's all I have to say about this. But don't discount Jaime. Now, I'm not saying he won't take down somebody, because we've got a brand vision where I think he does come in on a dragon to take down the mountain with somebody else to save the hound, but not now. Certainly not that dragon now. It's not time.
Great points. To respond to something you said, I just want to say that the harpy versus the dragon, the harpy's destruction versus the dragon's destruction is point on. Niko?
Oh, you lovely people. I love being here with you. I really do. That's why I'm up at 2:30 in the morning. So, and I'm really glad we have new edition. It's a refreshment of small council, and I'm really, really glad to see new faces. And to people in the comments, please remember, I was not, me or TeeBaby were not here from the beginning, and you welcomed us. So please be kind, keep that in mind. So let's move to this scene. I love these scenes because of course, I love looking at Jaime all the time, as you all remember. But I agree with you that it was kind of disrespectful of Cersei. She's just showing off, like, ha ha ha, look at me, what I can do with this harpoon. And it reminds us of Joffrey and his stupid, harpoon, whatever he had. What I wanted to say is, when Jaime was talking to Sam's dad, I don't remember. I did not do my homework, so I didn't wrote exactly what he said, but he said something along these lines, like he was trying to convince him to, like, fight for Cersei Knight and to be on Olenna's side. And he started saying something like, oh, but Olenna is now crazy old woman. And I felt that he was talking about Cersei, actually. It looked like that he was talking about Olenna, but he's actually talking about how Cersei is completely lost. She has nothing to do, like, she doesn't have an idea what she's doing. So I really like that. And I think that was the purpose of the scene, actually. Because Jaime is still fighting for Cersei, but you see that he's just losing his shit all over, like he's just, at one point he's going to fight till the end, but, like, everybody has threshold, or not the threshold, but like, once you can say one, enough is enough. What did I want to say? But there's not much. Yes, I love Sam's dad because he's like listening to him, and like he's tickling the issue from the Wow's point of view, and like, you have to do it, and this guy is like, just get it over it, like, I'm so sick of your bullshit. So I like the way the guy is acting. As for the white dragon, because we touched on this, I think one dragon will die. One dragon is going to be Night King's dragon that in the end Bran is going to have to control. I think that's how it's going to go down, and one dragon is going to be left for Daenerys. So in my mind, that's the logical thing to do. So that's it for me.
That's fantastic. TeeBaby?
Okay. As far as Cersei and Jaime scene, I thought it was interesting that he's basically running around talking about how crazy and she's a broken woman, sought on revenge, yet Cersei is basically the exact same person. And then I thought it was funny that she's talking about how you need to worry about the Mad Queen's daughter and how she's going to burn you with her dragons, and she had no problem. Innocent people, not all those people did her wrong. Innocent people intercept, and she blew all her enemies, including her uncle. So Jaime, to me, y'all know I don't like Jaime. To me, he's a disappointment because he's always talking about his vows from one to another, yet when it comes down to it, when you really need to protect the people, you really aren't protecting them, you're protecting your sister. And yeah, I know you love your sister, but at the same time, those clothes or the queen's clothes, you're wearing Lannister's things, you're already kind of tearing yourself away from her. But you can even tell that he sees that she's getting out of hand, because when she starts talking about how this woman will burn, when she got tired of those lords, she fed them to the dragon, and Jaime looks at her sideways like, girl, you just did that. And then I realized they never talked to each other about what happened. They said, we didn't even talk about our son Tommen, but they still never talked about that. And that's a big thing for Jaime, because Jaime, that was his whole thing of how he's, out of all the things, he saved these people, and yet here you are ready to put them back to war. And it's a throw to what told Danny when he was like, but you don't want to be queen of the ashes, but Cersei would. She'll burn everyone just to make sure she stays on top, or that you won't get it. And then of course we saw the scene where Danny back in like season 4 or 5, when Danny had the visions and she saw all the ashes, Cersei's cave. And then of course, because she blew up the Sept, so we know that she's capable of it. They keep reminding us like Cersei's trying to scare us. Cersei's was the guys whispering, they was like, oh, she's lying, she's just trying to scare us. And it's this whole thing that, you know, in order to have power, they must fear you. But I just find that Jaime is, I don't know, I just feel like Jaime at one point is, well, we all know he's going to leave her at some point, but I'm just like, what's going to be that one point that tells you like there's no saving this woman, that she's going to do whatever she wants? And I think it might be something to do with Euron. He might find her in a sexual act, because we know that she uses her body when she wants things done, and maybe that's the draw. Then it starts to click. It has to be something, in my opinion, it has to be something, I think, sexual with Cersei to really know that it's never going to happen, because they don't have their father to say that he's tearing them apart, or society, because she's queen now. So if she doesn't choose him, then that's something I think he'll be like, I can't deal with her. Like she was using me the whole time, and she'll never be with me. As far as the conversation with Jaime, once again, that's what made me start thinking like, this man already is in a good position. You came to him, so he already knows that you need him. That they introduced his son there again, because I think it's a different actor, but I think he's looking at a bigger picture, because he did say, you know, my family name means something. We're not just going to turn our backs on people. We're not going to butcher them, you know, at weddings. He was throwing it back at him. And I just thought that when he started saying that, it's like he must be aiming higher. Like if he's going to throw his name out there, it's not going to be to join the Lancers so he can usurp his own warden of the South. He's not going to do that. To me, he's going to aim for something higher. And what would be higher than to have your son as a king? Remind you, he also knows what happens. Like Cersei, when you make her mad, he threw that back. He says, I know what will happen if I upset her, which she does to people she does not like. So I think if he's going to throw his army in there, he's going for a bigger game. It can't just be to get Highgarden. Now, Highgarden is important because they are in control of the feed and the food and all of that. And we see later on Danny how they would basically, their plan was to starve people out. So the Highgarden is an important thing, but I think for Charlie, it has to be an even bigger thing for him to put his name out there like that. We just stayed with King's Landing, so I think that's all I really had for that.
Dan T, there's it's interesting to think about Randall trying to make it higher. He certainly had his son there. I saw some comments that Jamie referred to Dickon as Rickard, but I'm on, and I did not have closed captioning on, so I may be wrong. I thought he said Rickon, and Alizey and I were talking about that a split second ago. I thought that Jamie said, is it Rickon? Dickon. Right, that's it. Which just goes to show the irrelevancy of him because he hasn't proven himself. So what you were talking about, TeeBaby, with Randall Tarley setting his hopes higher, if he did, now is the fucking perfect time because Highgarden has all the food. If he's put in charge of Highgarden, then he could go even further by saying, all right, thanks, I'm in charge of Highgarden. If you want our food, you're going to need to marry my son to you, or etc. And certainly marriage is a big deal in this. That said, I don't see Randall being that, that he says he doesn't manipulate, and I believe him. He's just he's an army guy as opposed to a politique guy. I'm not even sure he would run Highgarden very well. Being a brilliant military genius doesn't make you a brilliant politician or a speaker to the people or somebody who knows how to handle financial national finances, etc. So interesting points. A couple of things to add before we move on to Alizey. I wanted to mention that I believe Bronn is probably still at King's Landing, but we have not seen him. So they're saving Bronn to come up later, if I'm not mistaken. I have no idea. But I also wanted to add that Edmure Tully is going to be a huge part of this pretty soon. With the Freys dead, we already know that Lannisters are on their way to the Freys. Edmure Tully has been given the Riverlands subservient to the Freys. So would Cersei be the one he goes to? Or would Cersei think she should go to Edmure to get the Riverlands on her side? It seems apparent that Edmure would be wiser to choose Dany and Sansa, and thus Jon as well. But I can't be sure that Edmure has not been manipulated. I don't know. Edmure's going to be a huge thing, and I'm not certain what his character will desire to do. Also, random side note that I completely forgot and thus left out. When Euron kills Obara and lifts her up with a spear and they show them from above, that is clearly a sexual metaphor. I don't know what the ultimate intent of that was, but he stabs her and picks her up, and it shows them from the top, and they both have their heads back. So, but back to King's Landing. Great points made by all. Alizey?
So I have a few points to make. To go back to Cersei and Jaime, I thought it was really interesting during the scene where Euron was trying to seduce Cersei. Yeah, not really seducing because it's in the middle of a court, but Jaime was really acting like a jealous boyfriend. So at this point, it's obvious to everyone that Cersei and Jaime have been doing it the whole time, and it's like they don't care anymore because basically all the Baratheons are out of the way. There's no one left to challenge that, and it also makes me think, like, is Jaime now Cersei's de facto hand, which would be ironic because he only has one hand, but we haven't seen Cersei have a hand so far, and he's kind of doing hand-like things by trying to convince Tarly to join their side. I don't think he did a good job persuading. I think to go back to the D&D thing, I think he rolled really low on persuasion on that check because Randall countered everything he said with a better point, and really just listening to it, Jaime's points just rang hollow. Like she's broken, she's a broken woman, but like it's not really. She's still pretty strong. The only thing that makes her broken is that everyone in her family is dead, but you could say literally the same for Jaime. So what is Cersei if Olenna is broken? I wanted to go back to what you said about the cut between when Jaime said I could give you Highgarden, and then it cut to Sam. I think that cut was just showing familial ties, just to show like this is Sam's dad, and now here's Sam. I wanted to raise a new point as well. I think Cersei is displaying classical elements of hubris. Like in ancient Greek, hubris was like excessive pride, or like dangerous overconfidence. Reading off of Wikipedia there just to make sure I got it right. And I think, well, in Greek literature and tragedies, hubris is what leads to a hero's downfall, the nemesis. And I think what we're seeing in Cersei's actions is more and more hubris, and each of those things is going to lead to her downfall. For example, her choice to engage with Euron. I think that will bring her down because by inviting the Greyjoys in, she's literally forcing the same event that she warned her bannermen about with the Dothraki horde coming, because a horde of Reavers isn't really much better. Pillaging, raping, like, just because they're from Westeros doesn't mean that it's okay. And that kind of made me think about, I think that's a good metaphor for like immigration policies in our world today. But where was I going with this? Yes, I think we're going to see Cersei, we're going to see her downfall as a result of her actions, especially the way she treats Jaime. And she's treating him more and more flippantly, like she's parading her new boyfriend around in front of him. And you can't treat someone like that for an extended period of time until they crack. And I think at some point Jaime is going to crack, and that's the Valancourt. And that was my point.
Damn, those are good points. So a couple of things to respond to her and to mix in with what TeeBaby and Niko said. Cersei literally told Jaime, "I don't care. They're gonna know I don't care anymore," before they fucked on the table and Jaime pushed the book away. And Cersei straight up told Tywin that they were fucking before Tywin died. So that's absolutely right. And Cersei currently has only two advisors, and that is Jaime and Qyburn. And Qyburn is brilliant and is a great advisor. Jaime is her advisor only for the perspective of being Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. And even then, he's really subservient to her. He just does whatever she says. I agree with the breaking point, but considering how many years Jaime has been under her manipulation, it is going to take a lot for Jaime to finally break. And I mean break not just in breaking his ties with her, but to respond by killing her. And I do agree that that's where we're headed. You may be 100% right about the cut with Sam. It is an excuse for exposition, but I felt like the way the music was cut and the line that was delivered just before we cut to Sam was too powerful to be irrelevant, but you may be correct. Great point about immigration policy. It's a matter of ignoring our fucked up insiders, and focusing on the fucked up outsiders in order to justify excluding the normal outsiders. The people that not just normal are suffering. But that's not quite the situation. It's not a matter of the people outside suffering that need to come in. But certainly there are fucked up insiders, and it's not just the Greyjoys, it's Cersei herself. But great point about the comparison between Cersei and the the Greyjoys and the Dothraki. That is a fucking great point I had not thought about. Also, Cersei, about hubris, we've talked about this a lot in previous videos. Cersei is not as clever as she thinks she is. She wants what she wants, and she tells Jaime, "Do you think in 40 years I didn't learn nothing of what Tywin told me?" We already know she is not Tywin. Tyrion is Tywin's son. I've got my theories about that. I do literally think that's true, versus Cersei and Jaime I think is not. But as far as learning their lessons, she tries to write the letters while she's talking to Elena, and Elena's like, "We both know you didn't do anything." She tries to hide the fact that she's manipulating the Faith Militant. And so Elena's like, "You're clearly doing it. It's you. We all know it's you." So agreed. She is the classic narcissist, and that goes back to her saying that Tommen betrayed her. And Mom made great points about that last episode, but still, I don't care what the fuck he did. He's king. And yes, he was manipulated, but he was manipulated because you allow the Faith Militant to be in charge. Anyway, she's the classic narcissist. And if you are a narcissist, it's hard to think you're wrong. All right, so anybody wants to respond to that, we'll do it on the next roundabout. I'd like to go ahead and go to Sam, and that's a complicated one. And then we'll probably go to Danny, and then we'll go up north. So about Sam, we get a lot from Sam in this episode. I'm going to go straight to the couple of things that I want to point out. So they did a great throwback in this episode to a couple of different things in the Sam room. The Maester is giving books to Sam. Sam's trying to talk to him to convince him of certain things, and he's saying you need to learn. Despite Sam's desire to end the attack, he does need to learn. And so a couple of things I want to cover here because this is all over the place. The Maester is writing well, I don't think we've been given his name, so I'm just going to call him Morrowind. Am I correct that he hasn't been given a name? Mom, what's his name?
He has a name, but I cannot remember.
He has a name. His name is Ebros.
Okay, Imbros. Got it. So
Ebros.
Maester Ebros is writing the before and after of Robert's ruling, and Sam kind of and he says, well, you don't like the name? He says something maybe a little more poetic. That seems absolutely clear that it's a song of ice and fire, which implies that Sam is writing it, but I got to add that there is going to be a Bran omniscient perspective near the end of this, so in the last chapter. So and the beauty we have is that we're in people's minds, which is not what a person writing would do. So the thing I mentioned about the throwback, so we not only get a mention of Shivalthan, the guy that is whose name is mispronounced by Tyrion and Bronn. We also get a mention of the Maester that that Sam is reading when Aemon walks in the room, and Sam's talking about all the torture that is done, and Aemon says he never got close to the wildlings. He's full of shit. But Sam's still enthralled with it. Ebros specifically mentions that guy and says he writes beautifully, but he has no idea what he's talking about. He's making up most of it. He also mentions another Maester who is a throwback to previous episodes, who writes correctly but writes badly. That might be Shivalthan. I think that's Shivalthan. Too bad he wasn't a better writer, that is Shivalthan, which is what Varys says to Tyrion. Too bad he wasn't a better writer. What a great fucking throwback, and it shows how important books are to this, despite them seeming to be passing fancy throughout the previous books. I'm gonna make sure that I've covered most. Okay, so the grayscale. There is an article online, an editorial, I will link to it eventually in the comments, by a dermatologist about the scene with not just the scene of the removal of the grayscale, but just generally what the doctors have to go through. It's a great article. It talks about how accurately this was done, how Sam's position in having been inexperienced but desiring to help is done. Also, one of the books that's mentioned is by Pylos, and that is the guy who wrote the book that Sam is using. But the dermatology article is fascinating. It talks about how you want to be honest with your patients, but also you want to be honest with them, but also you don't want to scare them. You don't want to have the book out in front of them because it makes it look like you don't know what you're doing. But Sam tells them this is going to hurt. One issue I have with the scene is Sam keeps putting his hand close to his mouth. I really wanted to be like, don't fucking do that, dude. You need to have a mask on, A, but B, let's not put fingers near mouths when you're doing this. I liked Sam drinking a little bit of the alcohol beforehand. The dermatologist says that it's accurate that you would need to excise the, depending on what the disease is, you need to excise the skin and then put an ointment on underneath. Niko doesn't like hearing this. I love that shit. I'm not bothered by it at all. I think they did a great job showing the skinning and the peeling, and reading that dermatology article made it all the better. I don't know if this will cure Jorah. But I think the real issue, and we mentioned it before, is typhoid Mary, somebody who has it but isn't showing symptoms and will end up spreading it, and there will be a question over where it's coming from and who's to blame. Let me also add that we've got people with grayscale, which are like rock people almost in fantasy cartoon D&D, that are mad. They have no intelligence or wisdom. They're just mad fighters. You also have whites, but if Jorah's skin is removed, that's almost like looks like Attack on Titan, but they're called the Psi, I believe, SI with a or so. Anyway, there's a character in species creatures in D&D that have no skin; they're all muscle. That's getting tied into this. I think it's fascinating. So that was the Jorah situation.
That's also called Bolton pets.
Say it again. Spell it.
Bolton pets, people with no skin.
Bolt on.
Bolton.
Like
Boltons.
You're muted.
She told you what I said.
What
Bolton, like Ramsay Bolton.
was the last word she said? Bolton.
I missed that one.
Okay. But the Bolton's victims is what you're getting at, Niko? Got it. Okay, great point.
Of pets.
Pets. Okay. And that's a great point too. And this is flaying for a benefit, which actually, now that I think about it, the medical dictionary has a picture of a flayed man on front of it. I forget what the name of that book is. The almanac, the medical almanac, whatever the fuck it is.
Anatomy.
Grey's Anatomy. That's it. Grey's Anatomy has a picture of the flayed man on front. That's a great fucking point. So, Pylos died of grayscale. It seems to me clear that's because he was treating grayscale. My mom was talking to me earlier that that's not just a result of him treating grayscale and thus getting it. It's a matter of he's the only one who's willing to do the surgery. So once he gets it, no one else is. I would encourage everybody watching this to go back and watch our video called Disease. It's a very important video and relative to all of this. So I have talked enough about this, and I will move on to my mom. Let me double, triple fucking check. Yep, Mama, your turn.
All of the above. I think this is why Martin put the flayed men in this epic. So allow me to say this. I mean, you cannot remove skin, which is an organ, and expect your victim patient to live. You know, this is similar to burn victims where they do debridement, where they have to remove skin to make new skin come in. If it's too far gone, you're going to die because you're going to lose moisture and you're going to be exposed to viruses, bacteria, etc. But let me do a little bit more dermatological analysis. And James, that was great. We've got four or five dermatologists in our family. Skin diseases are really very interesting. And I researched this yesterday. Not just skin diseases, but how things can be contracted through skin. And I was very shocked to find out that there are many diseases that are absolutely skin-to-skin contact. Whether or not there is a wound there or not, some viruses and bacteria can invade skin even if you have not been wounded there. It's fascinating. And some people have said, well, why didn't, Jorah chop off his arm? This was a big deal in the books as well when John Connington got grayscale. Cut off your arm. Well, let me take you back to the concept of leprosy. Leprosy starts out in certain extremities, but it really doesn't matter whether you cut it off or not, because once you have it, it's already become systemic. The virus is already within your entire system. So you can cut something off, but it'll show up later somewhere else. So back to the grayscale. James and I posited a long time ago in that disease thing, and we weren't completely right, but we talked about many concepts. This grayscale thing we think is very important, and I think and we've talked about it, it's very important because I think it might have to do somehow with how the Night's King kind of infects those whites. So we'll see. And there may be a treatment for it, or and even a cure for it that might be completely fortuitous. And Jon Snow, as we said in that that disease video we did, Jon Snow was the British physician who found out where the, I believe it was typhoid, was coming from in Britain and shut down the well. So there's epidemiology going on there. Let me just say that. And I'll leave that alone. With respect to Sam's journey, let's do an overall on this. Sam's journey is really important. The important thing is, yes, he is this historian. He gets the fact that that the Citadel is kind of just historicizing what is going on in the world, as opposed to maybe looking at the world in a broader view. I think Sam is trying to look at the world in a broader view. What really is going on? I mean, do we really just want to recount the adventures of Robert and just, you know, you can write a book and here's what the battles were, here's what happened in 9/11, here's what happened in Iraq, etc. Or do you want to use it to figure out what is going to fucking happen? So let's move on. What is going to happen? Sam's getting a worldview of this. And also the fact that he can do this, you know, and then go into an autopsy room. I mean, it doesn't matter anymore. This is what physicians do. They don't care about the person. They do, but they have to steel themselves and say, I'm going to do what I have to do to cure you. It's kind of, if you take that in a worldview, I can't look at the little people. I have to cure this from a worldview. So we've got that going on. I don't have much else to say about this except that, as I've said before, Jorah is not finished. Sam is brilliant. He is a wizard. And here we go. And I think I really think we need to move on to the rest of it.
Niko?
Yeah, I will keep it short. What I don't like about this scene, it's not that I don't like the scene or the script, it's completely fine by me, is that I personally hate seeing pus. It's just, you know, I have a gag reflex, so I did not watch these scenes when he was, not because of he was cutting him, I'm not, you know, afraid to look at that. Even the last episode with the shit, it was like, okay, whatever. But this, no. Like, do you know, like, guys, that there are actually YouTube channels with like pimples? What the fuck? Sorry, but oof, fuck that shit. Oh my god. Oh, people are weird. Human people are weird, really. So, oof. I want to say thank you to Renee and Alicia who are helping us in the chat. You know, thank you, girls. Thank you, ladies. Now, what I liked about this scene is like
Brackenwood are doing it, and I appreciate it all.
Oh yes, Don. Yeah, thank you. I liked everything you said. Change. It was like a reflection on past episodes, and it was really, really good catch. What I liked about Sam is that, and I talked to a few people in the comments, is like he doesn't give a shit about becoming a maester because he knows that he needs to get shit done. You know, move quickly, because if you want to, there's a little bit of, you know, this to educational system, because, you know, it takes quite a bit of time to achieve. I know that, you know, myself. It takes a lot of time and effort, and there's a certain, you know, steps you need to take. There's a certain system. It's a part of the system. You have to go through the system. That's it. So I think they're dissing this a bit, and, you know, like he's like, fuck this, you know, I'm gonna help you. I don't know if it's gonna work, but, you know, we're gonna try. And I love this because I know a little bit about science, and when there is a certain trend, there's always, I don't know about other sciences, but I know for physics, when there's a certain trend and everybody follows it, and if you are just try to think a little bit differently, you're looked down upon, you know, like down on. So and every time when there was major discovery, it was always the case when somebody, you know, thought outside the box. And now, like, we are in the middle of science is a really big problem, because we reached our limits in some detection sense. And I'm not going to go into this because I can talk for hours about it, but we're at a really interesting, we're living in interesting times, if you know what I mean. So I loved what Sam did, and he had the balls to do it, because he knows that there's a big possibility that he's going to fail. So and that's bravery. And I think that I already said in the comments, somebody said that, oh, Sam's going to be hero in the end. No, he's already hero several times over. He keeps proving himself to be, like the guy. So I really love Sam. I think that's it. I'm gonna let T speak because I want to hear what she has to say. Thank you, guys.
Great. It's hard not to fucking love the shit out of Sam. I knew your father, which, by the way, I was there when he died. Sam says I was a little worried because Jorah knows that he was killed by his own men, so I was a little worried how Jorah was going to react to that, and I think that conversation needs to happen. But I knew your father. I was there when he died. You're not dying today. What fucking I love hearing that shit. It's this combination of how brave. I mean, I know he killed a Thin and he killed a White Walker. Bravery in its own way, each of these moments. What bravery it takes to take to touch a diseased man, to take some process that you don't know if it's going to work, to risk your livelihood over this. And though he wants to kill the White Walkers or to go help Jon ASAP, he needs to learn these lessons. It's a shame he didn't start earlier. But I mean, it's a battle. He needs to learn. He needs to help. How is he going to weigh this? All right, TeeBaby.
May I just add, not just risk his life, but his reputation, which is always, there's so many big egos in science. I know that for myself. So.
And if I can say something else, remember that Oberyn blew through the Citadel to learn basically one thing: how to use poisons. I mean, that is foreshadowing for Sam blowing through the Citadel to get where he has to go. And I think all of this is there. And Niko, your points are brilliant. Sam is going to blow through, and he'll probably be ejected like Qyburn, but he is going to have known what he needs to know.
Yeah, so Oberyn had money to pay for his school.
I love all of you. You will all get a chance to talk. We got to go in order. It's unfair. Okay, I love you. T.
Blow through it, promise, ladies. So it's interesting with Sam, and I get it. It takes bravery and all of that, but he's also being kind of reckless. I just can't. How can I put this in a nice way? I really can't put this in a nice way. Sam's cool, but he's being a little reckless, because in that scene with him and the Maester, he was telling about how you need to research, like do your research. And he says, well, I think I know how to make a way. He's like, yeah, I'm familiar. It was only 2 cases curing grayscales this advance, and he's like, you know how he died, right? Through grayscales. It's a little bit reckless because you think of the position that Sam's in. He's touching food, he's touching the pot. When I saw it, the only thing I thought is that, oh man, he's going to end up curing Jorah, but possibly either he's going to catch it or he might be someone that spreads it. They keep showing this stuff about grayscales, and it has to mean something. One thing I didn't like was the fact that it didn't hurt him at first because it was stone. You know how, like in the books, they told Tyrion to poke all his toes and stuff and hope that it hurts, because that's a good sign. If it doesn't, then that means that you might have it. That's an only slight nitpick of that. But once again, Jorah, I don't like Jorah anymore. I thought he was cool at first, but I can't stand him anymore. I just think that he caught grayscales, and I'm only talking about TV Jorah because I know book Jorah is a completely different person. But you can catch grayscale through contact, through objects. Yeah, he never thinks to use gloves. His last moments, he thinks that he's going to die. Yes, it's poetic that he's writing a letter to Dany talking about, I wish that I could see you. But at the same time, you are endangering this woman. Dany's not going to be the first one to touch this parchment that they sent. It's going to be someone else. And then you just keep thinking someone's going to touch this and someone's going to touch that. And the next thing you know, you're spreading grayscales. I just think that Sam's being a little bit reckless. Back to it, I did catch the nod to about I would think it would be poetic. So I'm like, okay, knowing that, you know, Sam was the one who was writing Ice and Fire. I did catch that. But overall, this scene, and I'm with you, Niko, I cannot stand seeing the pus and all of that. It reminds me of people that pop their pimples online, and people watching, they enjoy it. And I think Game of Thrones is doing that, where they're freaking us out, and the next thing you know, it's like it's a pot pie and it's just gross. So eat food while you're watching Game of Thrones this season. It's just not a good idea. But overall, I just think that Sam's got his courage to do something. I think that he's rushing it and that he's putting himself in danger trying to hurry up. And yes, he can't wait. He's in a position where he can't wait because they were going to send Jorah off the next day. However, I still think that because of what this rare disease is, it's only 2 types of known documents that someone cured it, and this is the first time. And then you're also talking about the supplies you're using is low. So if something was to mess up and you need to hurry up and fix it, how are you going to fix it? Now you're putting all these people in danger just to save one person. And once again, I get it, but I just feel like Sam's being reckless. I feel like at one point in time, Sam is going to possibly get caught because he's still in the swords. I still think Charlie's going to, something about that sword is going to pop up. And also with the books, like, I don't know if that rare disease was in the forbidden section and he just told on himself, or if he found it in the section where he was, he does on a normal basis. And the other thing that I thought was interesting is that that Maester gave him a book on the history of Lannisters. I thought that was Pylos. And that's it. That's all I got. Because once again, I just want Jorah to stop touching shit. It just bothers me. Person who has like HIV and he has sex with everyone, he doesn't say, hey, I have it. That's Jorah. Like, if you're going to touch something, at least tell people like, hey, I got grayscales, like back away, do something. But that's it.
T the assassin. Okay, T, you made so many goddamn good points. As usual, I'm going to cut in here, and then it'll be Alizey's turn to talk. You are 100% right. Sam is being extremely reckless on so many different counts. He stole the Night's King's book, the book about the Long Night. Everybody in the town knows that he's the one who has an interest in that. If they know it's missing, they know it's him. And you probably aren't allowed to take those books out of the library. It's not like you can check them out. You're probably not allowed to take them out. He also tomorrow when somebody walks in and Jorah's got all the fucking grayscale removed, they're gonna know it was Sam. There's no way they won't. I mean, it was Sam that's asking for this guy to be helped. At least Ebros will know that it was him. And he's risking his own life. 100% right, and the lives of everybody he touches, including little Sam. I want to point out something interesting. I don't mind the pus sort of stuff. It is horrible to be eating while doing that, especially when they literally compare it to food, which we've had twice. But I think it's interesting what people have a disgust for. By the way, a study came out recently that said that people who have a problem with homosexuality have the same reaction to watching homosexuals have intimate moments. They have the same mental reaction as if they were seeing something that's disgusting or gross, like throw up or pus, etc. Which I've argued for a while that's the difficulty of emotion, of empathizing, is because there's this reaction of disgust to things we don't had an interest in ourselves. Like there are places in the world where people eat tarantulas. When we think of that, we think, ugh, which makes us almost have a natural reaction that it's somehow immoral. Some of those are probably right. You watch somebody murder somebody else, you think that just feels wrong. Speaking of which, some people have a fear of the universe. I have a cousin that was told of black holes when she was very young by my mother, and it scared the living shit out of her, and she still has problems thinking about it. And she is a dermatologist and probably deals with pus all the time and has no problem with it. But she has a problem with that stuff. And let me also add, isn't it ironic that rape is in it? And a lot of us, my mom had issues with it, but with watching it, but we can watch that. But pus is an issue. I'm not saying anyone is right or the other. It's just funny to think of what people can and can't watch. I have a problem watching rape in movies unless it's central to the plot and we watch character development. I was talking to Alizey about this. Movies like The Hills Have Eyes with that kind of stuff, it's irrelevant except to make you really fucking creeped out. Or Hostel, to watch people get their fingers cut off. I get no enjoyment out of that. Unless it's central to the plot, like Jaime getting his hand cut off, Theon getting his dick cut off, what happens to Sansa and how it'll affect her ultimately in the storyline. If it ain't going to be, and the impact of it, you need to see the impact it has on people in order to for it to be meaningful. I just think that it's funny to think of what people can and can't watch. She's going to say it in a minute. Yep. Two more tiny things. I would love that Jorah had trouble moving. It just added more weight to the situation. He seemed a little immobile with his arm. I had trouble mixing that with the stone people at Valyria, who seemed pretty quick, but still. I just want to note this. It's apparent, but I think it's important to mention. Jorah was about to kill himself when Sam walked in the room. Jorah was literally writing a suicide note, and you see him take a look at the sword, which was mentioned in the previous episode. But I think it's important to remember, as far as Jorah's character goes, that he was literally writing his suicide note and going to kill himself that night. So that's a big deal. All right. Thank you for waiting. Your turn.
So I guess I want to start because everybody's talking about popping, and one of my favorite YouTube channels is Dr. Pimple Popper, and if you want to be desensitized to what Sam is doing, a good way to do that is to go just watch her remove an epidermoid cyst, and there's a lot. It's very much like what happened in the episode, and I watch those because I find them relaxing, and I think dermatology is fascinating. So I think with anything, the more you watch something, the more you get desensitized to it, and that brings up the point that you made about rape. I find rape scenes incredibly uncomfortable to watch, and at the same time, I watch Game of Thrones, and I've seen so many rape scenes that it doesn't bother me as much as it did in the first season. I think for me, it really bothered me when it happened to Sansa because I really related to her during that scene. So to get back to Sam, I think what I wanted to talk about is the urgency. Sam needs to find out as much information as he can, as quickly as he can, but the Citadel just does not work that way. You can't go to university and come out in one semester knowing everything. And especially you can't go to medical school and come out of it knowing everything in one semester. And if he wants to be a maester, he needs to know a lot. He needs to make a full chain. And I don't think he's going to get the chance to do that before the story is up. I think he's going to discover stuff because he's being treated as an expositionary device at the moment in the show. He just, Sam's there so that he can look in a book and tell you something that other characters don't know. And I think he's going to find something out urgently that causes him to have to go back to the wall without finishing his training. He's probably going to take some books back with him of proof of whatever he found out. Although I kind of hope that Bran does it, I suspect this may be how we get the reveal about Jon's parentage. If there was ever any writing about it, it would probably be in the Citadel. I think he's going to be a chainless maester at the end of this, which is considered it's described as a shameful thing to be a maester without a chain, like Qyburn. So I think here Sam is being used as a foil for Qyburn. Here's two very different examples of what a maester could be and what a maester would want to be. Qyburn is what Sam could be if he was more twisted, in the sense that he's also breaking the rules. He's also doing whatever he thinks is important and right at the expense of what the Citadel is telling him to do, which is clean shit, basically. I think there's a lot of information at the Citadel that Sam needs to be there to understand, and I don't think he's going to have the chance to do that. And while we're talking about the Citadel, I wanted to kind of bring up a character that hasn't been in the books yet, Alaros/Sorella. I was just wondering if you guys think that she's going to show up now that Sam is at the Citadel, because I like her. I think her character would be great representation. As you know, I think she's essentially written as a trans character, so I would like to see him. Sorry. Oh, I misgendered. So if Sorella does show up, Alaros, there would be one more Sand Snake. But you know, I kind of doubt it because they've already wrapped up the Sand Snake story-ish. But it would be a good time for it since we're at the Citadel. Those are basically all the points I have. Oh yeah, the other thing that really pissed me off that Sam took the bottle and drank from it after Jorah touched it. I was just like, no, don't. I think Sam is going to spread grayscale to probably everybody in the Citadel. He's like touching everyone's poop. He's feeding people. I mean, we don't know that grayscale goes in through food, you know, but yeah, I get really annoyed with Sam. Like, he's not very good at disease control. But they don't know much about it yet. Maybe Sam is the one that discovers that. Maybe he's going to write a book about how to cure grayscale, and after, you know, his successful test, this is going to be like the beginning of modern medicine, possibly in Westeros. Yeah, that's as far as I got.
God, what fucking great points. Okay, I'm gonna respond, and then we'll go. I'm gonna mention a new topic, and we'll go around. If anybody wants to say anything about this particular topic, you can also say that before you say the next one. So, continuing on this particular topic, all Meisters are touching the poop. It's part of the process for them to get where they are, and he's wearing gloves when he's doing it. So although it's still a big risk to me, it's part of the process of becoming a Maester. And that Dermatologist talks about that, how cleaning the bedpans used to be the doctor's job. It's not anymore, but they're still shat upon as far as duties go because they need to learn their place. I never viewed Alaris/Sorella as transgender, and that is definitely an important thing. I just thought that she was disguised because women aren't allowed, but that may very well be what she was doing. As far as Sorella/Alaris or Arianne coming into this, I need to go back and watch. I can't guarantee this happened, but I thought that Doran said 4 daughters in the television show, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought he said 4 daughters. I don't have a fucking clue, but we have the options of Arianne and Alaris coming back. So we'll see what happens with that. It seems really fucking late for that to happen, though. So. And Deus Ex Machina for her to show up out of nowhere. Somebody mentioned this in the comments in passing, and I don't see it right here, but I wanted to mention when Sam is cutting away at Jorah's stuff, and he stops for a split second, and Jorah looks up at him, and when he's still making the first cut, because this happens later too, and Jorah kind of gives him the nod to keep going. But during the first cut, Sam kind of stops and looks at Jorah, and Jorah looks at him. That's because Sam is cutting off his nipple. Sam knows that he's at that point and is realizing what that means, and that's what he's doing. That happened in the show already. That's what happened with that Unsullied. His nipple was cut off, and he didn't react. Jorah, on the other hand, which goes to show what that means. So again, this responding to what you said, 2 things. Great point about Sam not getting a chain, and this goes back to what TeeBaby was saying about him crossing lines and making real reckless decisions. I think he's extremely likely to get kicked out. He's making too many. First of all, you mentioned there's not enough time, and that he may discover something and decide to leave. based on what I'm seeing, he looks like he's going to get kicked the fuck out really soon. But regardless of why he leaves, this brings up a great point you said. Do you need a degree to be an expert in something? Do you need that piece of paper? Just like Qyburn has been ridiculously helpful to Cersei. He's obviously brilliant, but he does not have the chain. That said, he's made some immoral choices, maybe immoral choices that he learned from and society can benefit from, testing, doing experiments on live individuals. But it's a moral line. The moral lines that Sam is crossing is for the betterment of society without actually detrimenting anybody, arguably. Qyburn's doing something else. But Sam, we are invested in Sam's passion for reading and learning and his desire to do good for the realm enough to believe that he is capable of doing what a Maester could despite not having the chain. And the chain is a status symbol that should arguably be gotten. That said, a degree says a lot. It takes a lot of work to get that done. Last thing to add to what you said, you mentioned the rape stuff didn't bother you as much in Game of Thrones, at least as far as Sansa. And I was going to say something, but you ended up saying because you were invested in her character, I believe, and that's the reason. You saw that it was affecting her character, and that's why it didn't bother you. That said,
That's why it did bother me.
It did bother you. Yeah. So the issue with becoming desensitized is that it can occur because you are detaching yourself. And that is a huge issue, because if you're detaching yourself, you're not empathizing, which means you are not getting the most a reader can or watcher can out of a situation. So you hedge your bets with that. Okay, so the next scene we need to talk about, and feel free to comment on that as well, is the Arya scenes. So Arya ends up at the inn at the crossroads, sees Hot Pie, is completely apathetic to the situation, and there are literal throwbacks to what the Hound did and said. I didn't catch it, and I had to see comments on Reddit and the people commenting on the stream underneath here, but she is literally doing what the Hound did, whether it's a PTSD or a detachment from herself. She's staring off into the distance, and she's listening to the people behind her, which is a sign that she's gained these certain skills, but she is completely detached. The closest thing she does to Hot Pie is put her hand on her shoulder. The only moment we get where she reverts back to who she was before is when Hot Pie tells her that Jon is in charge of Winterfell, and she has a moment where she says, "You're lying." She literally used that line when she was a kid, and that throws back to her still having a connection. It was difficult for me to watch her apathy because, and I don't mean difficult literally to watch it, but it was a harsh thing because it shows just how much I thought as a child, I spoke as a child, and then I became a man. I put away childish things. It's important for us to maintain a connection to our being a child. We're never not going to be, there's never a point where we become an adult other than legally. So we're all children to a certain extent compared to others. But this will hedge into the next part about Nymeria. So I did not catch this either. I was surprised that a lot of people did. I had to go look up. It just didn't connect with me. It was, first of all, it was extremely emotional, that Nymeria scene, way more emotional than I thought it was going to be. But when Nymeria walks away, that scene is heavy for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it's a metaphor for Arya. Arya says, "You're not her." And I almost think that was a mistake as far as the writing, because it made, I know a lot of viewers think, oh, is that not Nymeria? What she is saying is a reference to when she is speaking, when Arya is speaking with her father, and her father says, "One day you'll marry a lord and you'll be the lady of a castle," and she says, "That's not me." Arya says, "That's not me." That's what Arya is referencing. That's not Nymeria. Nymeria is no longer her wolf. She's the leader of a pack and has her own thing to do. That is a metaphor for Arya, in that Arya is on her own and is no longer the child she was, and she's not going to do what her father thought. She's no longer going to be that child. But Nymeria leaving her is a metaphor for what she is afraid her family might do, in my opinion, or will be, or might be, and what she may do to her family, that she's no longer who she was and the connection to her family is not the same. I don't know how this is going to play out, but in my opinion, Arya is too far gone to get back. She is when you play with fire, I know we love her because she's a fucking badass, but she is vengeance obsessed, and she has detached herself from herself. She's gotten so close to a faceless man. At what point are you no longer yourself? To quote I Heart Huckabee, how am I not myself? How am I not myself? How am I not myself? Anyway, she's detaching herself from who she was and thus her family. I'm not what it was. So the connection between Arya and the Hound is slowly becoming more connected to humanity, and literally in the first episode, he buries the child, whereas Arya is becoming more disconnected. She chooses to go north. Jon is leaving, and we're going to get to that in a minute. So I don't think Jon's going to be there. It'll probably be Sansa or Bran, and I don't know. Who the fuck knows how this crisscross is going to happen? Sansa, in my opinion, cannot leave Winterfell unless there's another Stark there. And Bran may be that one. I don't think Arya is going to reveal who she is. She will be afraid to, which will be a great symbol for what issues are with her. I was wrong about Arya taking the soldier's face, so that's my bad. But Arya becoming more hound-like and the Hound becoming more childlike. This is all symbol of things to come. Okay, Mama. Hello, Mother.
Okay, I'm going to completely disagree with everything you've said. So everybody clear their mind. What Arya said to Nymeria is, that's not you. And she said that after she said, come home with me. Come home with me. What that meant was, and I'm not just talking out of my ass right now because I watched the showrunners talk about what that meant. What it meant was, and it was a throwback to what Arya said to Ned, it's not me. That's not what I am. I am not going to willingly cast myself into being a lady of a castle, and I'm not willing to be domesticated. Nymeria has been on her own for 4 or 5 years now, and she is not willing to be domesticated. Arya was not willing to be domesticated as a pup, and neither would a direwolf. I mean, it takes some kind of a connection to make an animal, a dog or whatever, even a human being. It takes family over a long period of time to domesticate them. So when Arya said, that's not you, and look at her reaction, and the showrunner said they stayed on Maisie's face for a long time, and she ultimately smiles because she gets it. She's not really domesticated. Nymeria is not really domesticated. But having said that, I disagree with what James thinks is going to happen to Arya. And I disagree with what may happen with Nymeria. I think that was a setup scene for Nymeria coming back later. And this scene absolutely mirrored when Dany's dragon Drogon came, and I think it was at Yunkai, or I think it was Yunkai, but it might have been Marine. When Drogon comes back and you know, Dany reaches to Drogon and he kind of sniffs her and flies away. I mean, it's not time for them to be reunited for different reasons, but still, they have their own missions, but they'll be back to save if necessary. And we know Drogon came back to save Dany in the fighting pits. Look for Nymeria to come back again. Now, I'm not going to say that Nymeria nor Arya are going to be truly domesticated, but they are mammals, and they have a sense of oxytocin, if I have to use that chemical, which is a hell of a chemical. Look it up. But they have a sense of family and that warmth, compassion that comes from that chemical oxytocin, which is key to mothers bonding with children. It's the overwhelming one that makes you just want to melt when you when you hug someone you love, your baby, your family. So look for Nymeria to come back. And narratively, Martin has done this so that Nymeria will come back. Perhaps Arya will save Nymeria this time, because you know what? She owes it to her. Last time she sent her away. So we'll see about that. I do think that Arya is going home, but I don't think it will be soon. Like, if we look at the scene where Jon's going to come down on the map and meet up with Dany at Dragonstone, and he's going to Dragonstone. We know that. I don't think that he and Arya will meet during that time. I think it is important that Arya uses this development time to figure out, does she really want to go home? She's still torn a little bit. You know, we saw her at the end of the crossroads. Do I go south? Do I go north? No. Again, it's the journey. But I love it. And remember that, you know, Nymeria and Ghost are the male and female, the yin and the yang, left for the direwolves. And if this plays out the way we think it's going to, neither direwolf is going to live. But if there is a bittersweet ending, and there are 2 direwolves left, then they are the Targaryen twins that will make the next generation of direwolves. I don't think it's going to be a really happy ending like that. But with respect to Arya's relationship with Nymeria, it meant, that's not me. And that's not you. We have a hard time going home. We have a hard time fitting in. So that's all I have to say about that. And she's going to go home. Oh, I want to say this, because it's going to get sidetracked. My opinion is this. Jon's going to Dragonstone. Dany's going to say, I don't believe in White Walkers any more than the rest of Westeros believes in dragons. And Jon's going to say, what the fuck? They're coming. And she's going to say, I don't know it. Grumpkins and Starks. So Jon is going to have to go and get a White. He's going to hook up with Thoros and the Hound, and they're going to go get a White, and they're going to bring it back down to Dany. During this time, Bran is going to hit it up at Winterfell. Now listen, he's at the wall right now. He's going to send a raven. Who's that raven going to go to? Jon's not there. Sansa's going to get that raven. James, I want you to listen to me. Sansa's going to get that raven, and it's going to say, I'm coming home, and I got a lot of shit to tell you. And
who'd you say is going to send the raven?
Bran, he's at the fucking wall. They got ravens galore. He's going to send a raven to Winterfell. Sansa's going to read it. Jon's not going to be there. And Bran's like, I'm coming home. Sansa's going to be like, what the fuck? Hell yeah, come on. Bran's going to get there. He's not going to tell her everything, but he's going to tell her enough that I think she is going to say, and I think Littlefinger's going to check out at that point, because I think he's going to realize Bran might be a little bit powerful. And Sansa's going to check out. I think she might go to the Vale with Littlefinger. And Bran is going to be left in charge at Winterfell, which is the appropriate person to be there if you trust him. If he's not the Night's King. If you trust him. So that's what I think is going to happen. So wait for Arya and Jon to reconnect. Not yet.
Wonderful. Niko?
You guys, I could talk to you for 3 days. I wanted to say this thing you said about homosexuality and, you know, being selective on some things that you cannot watch is definitely not true. I'm basically an Oberyn, but I'm faithful to my husband, so it doesn't make any sense. The question, you intrigue me now. Why are we selective in some things? Like I can watch rape or something like that with no problem, but I cannot watch this. We're not going to mention it, and I cannot watch somebody being hit in the face. It's just no. Oxytocin, I think that they give this chemical to women to induce labor. If I remember from my time in med school. And please, people, don't bring trans thing into this, because now you're talking about it because it's actually trending on Twitter or something, but it was not Martin's, you know, he could not predict the future, what's going to happen. So, or maybe somebody's watching RuPaul's Drag Race. I don't know. I know I do. So, I was mistaken last episode that I did not know that they're gonna introduce again the Inn at the Crossroads, but I think it was good because it took like few minutes to do it, and because the whole season is about, you know, like reuniting, so it was good, and I was glad to see this scene, but not for like Hot Pie. I mean, he's a cute chubby little guy, but who cares? The thing what I liked is what James talked about. You can see that Arya is like, when she's with the soldiers in the first episode, with complete strangers, she actually can show herself. But there is a difference when she's with somebody who she knows from before. She's completely not involved in this. Like, there's no, you know, how do you say this in English? Like, she's not personal with him. She's avoiding him. I don't know. I think she's afraid to you know, open herself up again or whatever. So I love this. And for the Nymeria scenes, this is actually the time that I cried, and I don't usually cry when there's like dogs or animals, because I'm not that into animals unless it's hamsters. So I don't know. It made me cry really, because out of all characters, I'm personally, how to say, I'm more the most invested in Arya. I think she's my favorite character. When I say Jamie, of course I like Jamie. I mean, come on, Nikolai and whatever. But and I really do like the character, but Arya is something that I really, really like. So I think that is why I cried. And I think it was beautiful. I think it was done well, and I love how Maisie's acting. I think she learned a lot. So and I also wanted to add what LaDonna said, Grumpings and Starks. That's how I understood it. So it was really funny, Grumpings and Starks. So there's a lot of information for me, and I'm going to give TeeBaby to talk now. Thank you, guys.
A tiny little response to what you said. I understand why you say that about trending on Twitter for transsexuality, but I think, no offense, Niko, that's not a valid way to look at it, in my opinion, at all. Gender dysphoria has been an issue for as long as there have been humans, and likely almost guaranteed before then. And Martin's dealing with issues that were not treated with the same openness that they're treated with now: rape, removing penises for the sake of torture, those kind of things. So though I hear what you're saying, it may be a trending topic, which it makes it easier to talk about, certainly. I don't think that it would be beyond Martin to discuss. I mean, he's got homosexuality in this books. There is a feminine male who joins the Night's Watch. Anyway, TeeBaby.
You guys made good points about Arya. The only thing that I truly noticed that she was acting more like the Hound, especially, but I didn't pick up on her acting more like the Hound until she took the L and started drinking. And I was like, she acting kind of like the Hound. And I was like, oh, okay. I did peep the whole whispering, her listening to what the two men were saying, where they were trying to hurry up and get back to King's Landing because the prices will triple up my food. As far as Arya and Nymeria, but inside HBO, they do explain what that whole scene meant. Add on to that is that with Arya and Nymeria was never domesticated. Even when Arya tried to teach her to sit and move, if you go back to that scene where she was trying to show Jon what she learned, Nymeria never listened to her. In fact, Nymeria wasn't going to listen to her until she started throwing rocks at her and that's the only thing she could have done at that moment to save her. But that was not Nymeria from jump. So even in that aspect, that's okay. You can also say that about Arya because she feels as though lady, or the typical lady where she's supposed to be someone's wife and mother. That's more Sansa. That's what she was really raised. And when you think about how Ned spoke to Arya and Sansa, he almost just like one of his sons as well, because he understood that feminine, or I'll say she didn't identify as the traditional roles that they would say a female would. Period. But overall, I think with Arya, she is faced with two decisions because she is on that list to the point where she, or it might have season, she said that they owed her a face, or they owed her a name. I forget if it was season 4 or season 5, but she was talking about Joffrey, that she was saying this name over and over again, and she's so close to it. She has 2 more people that's on her list, and back to Westeros, she didn't go straight home. She went straight for the phrase, and then she finished them up. And then she's headed to Cersei, and she keeps talking about Cersei, which makes me think that she could possibly be the one that kills because of that whole it's the boy and a girl type of now. And I was like, oh, they might be talking about the Valonqar more than they're talking about, you know, the prince and the princess, or at least that's what I thought. And also just from the fact that Arya is the type that she's been learning how to deal with poison, as we can see, and they're always showing Cersei drinking. And I'm thinking, oh, you know what? Showing throughout this season, I feel like they're showing there's so many possibilities of who could be this fallen card to actually kill Cersei, because they give you hints that it could be Jaime, but then they give you hints it could be Euron, but then they give you hints that it could be Arya. So I think that I like that aspect that they're playing it also. It's like who's who. I like the scene. I think that Arya is going to miss Jon, of course, and I think we're going to have a scene with Arya and Sansa most likely. I don't see Sansa leaving, though. That's all the thoughts I really have as far as Arya, but I am going to have to dip out, you guys.
Oh, you got to go?
Yeah, I'm having like pressure in my eye, and me staring at the screen is just making it worse. I really wish I could finish it off with you guys, because I want to know what you guys think about Sansa and Jon back and forth and his ideas. And I also want to know about what you think of Dany and her acting more like Cersei. So chat on. It's been nice, and I'll definitely talk to you guys later on.
Why don't, before you leave, you give a real quick 30, 45-second gist of your Winterfell and Dany's thoughts.
Okay, with Dany, I think that she's acting more like Cersei, where she's quick to use her forces to conquer instead of actually being a queen and a ruler. It's good that she's listening to Tyrion, but I think she's going to unleash her dragons, because I think something's going to go wrong where she sees that she can't just give them by peace offering. Tyrion did that last season, and he tried to offer peace before he went with the dragons, and she had to come back and was like, no, we have to go straight vengeful. So she's starting to act more like Cersei, and I think it's a lot of parallels between those two, where they're willing to actually risk a lot of people's lives in order just to conquer. But it was interesting with her and Varys, when them talking, how she was it could seem like she was being really pushy, but I think she already knew that he gave the orders to kill. But it was like with Jorah, she has to figure out if he's actually going to be loyal to her or not. And that's why I think she kept on pushing and talking about, you know, I think that's why she kept pushing as far as saying, well, who was the actual one that sent the lesson? Because remember, she kept pushing for Jorah to tell the truth, and he didn't. So I think that's all she was really trying to do as far as that loyalty thing. And as far as Sansa and Jon, I think that he's starting to learn more, but I think he kind of messed up again. I know y'all hate me backing up Sansa, but I have to. The only thing I'm saying is that I like the fact that Jon, he holds an open court, but it's like he doesn't have the final thoughts with his council first to let them know they're on the same page. Because when he said he was going to Dragonstone, that was like he didn't confirm with Davos, which I like the idea, but I think he needs to just understand that he needs to have, so they're all on the same page, he needs to say it in the council when they're behind a closed door before he starts to announce it. Fact that he gave Sansa Winterfell for the time being, I thought that was a smart move. And also, the last thing I want to point out is that if you notice, if you screenshotted that picture of the actual note that Tyrion sent him, he was saying how, you know, 7 queens and how they have all these armies, and he didn't say bend the knee that Dany had told him to do. And Sansa pointed that out because remember in season 1, she was the one who had to write a letter, and it's one of those in-betweens, and both of them caught it. And that's all I really got to say. But love chatting with y'all, and I'll see you next week. And I'm sorry about the whole eye thing.
You're the shit, T. Thank you so much. Love you.
Nice meeting you. It's been real. Love y'all. Bye.
Bye. Hope you feel better.
It's great to meet you.
Okay, so one tiny little response to her. It was she made some great freaking points. I did not even think about Nymeria not doing what she was told from the very beginning when she was told to sit or come Nymeria, fetch Nymeria, whatever. She didn't do it. All right, Alizey.
So I have a few different points. I noticed in the comments people were talking about how Arya probably killed those Lannister soldiers. I do not think that she did that, and I think it's because they were kind to her, because they gave her guest rights. And we've seen after the Red Wedding, Arya's not going to fuck around with guest rights. Like, that's something that's a touchy subject for her now. And I think after they offered her food and they were kind to her, they sang for her, she was like, I think that made her see this conflict in a more humanizing light, because she sees that they're just boys. They're little boys. She's seen more of the world than they have, and she understands more than they do. And yet, the fact that she, in the comments, that the fact that she accepted the food is like the key. She would not have accepted it if she was going to kill them. And she looked at their swords; they were far away. So I think Arya, while she's going towards a dark path, she still has like a noble spirit in her. She still respects the laws to some extent, like that she cares about guest rights. She cares about making sure the women aren't harmed. When she killed the Freys, she made sure that the little girl didn't drink the poison. So like I think there's a chance for Arya to not end up completely evil at the end of this. And I wanted to kind of lead into the Valonqar thing. The part that made me, like, I've always considered the possibility that Arya could be the Valonqar, because she's a younger sibling and because she's had Cersei on her list this entire time. The factors that make it slightly more likely that it could be her is, even though like that entire prophecy hasn't been mentioned in the show, it could be her because in the previous episode they talked about how in High Valyrian it's a gender neutral. There are gender neutral nouns. So who's to say that this Valonqar noun is also not gender neutral? I'll have to go check it on Duolingo. Maybe they'll tell you the masculine, feminine part of it. But I think if the prince who was promised could also be a princess, then there's a chance that the little brother could also be a little sister. And the theory I like the most about this, sort of crackpot wise, is that, well, okay, here's how my theory goes. I think James is going north to deal with some shit. At least he's going west. Jaime. I think Arya is going to take Jaime's face, and wearing Jaime's face, she's going to kill Cersei. I would like to see that anyway. And if she doesn't, then I would like to see Jaime kill Cersei. And either way, that would fulfill the Valonqar prophecy because Jaime is her little brother as well. So it could be both in that sense. Let's see, what else do I have here? We're talking about Sansa and Winterfell as well.
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay. What else were we talking about?
So the Nymeria scene, the hot pie scene.
Sorry.
I'm not making sure that's what we're on. Yeah, no, the Nymeria scene and the hot pie scene.
The Nymeria scene was my favorite. I missed her. I was very glad to see her again. And just to get out of the theory part, I think that part was like the CG there was a little shoddy because it was very obvious that the wolves weren't next to her, and it was also very obvious that the direwolf was actually a dog, to me anyway. So you know, it could have been better, but still, Nymeria, I was very happy. I don't really have much to say about that scene that hasn't already been said, though. I do think, like, when she said, it's not you, she was just saying, like, that's not something you would do. I understand. I accept that you don't want to be my family anymore because you moved on. And she's, I think it's foreshadowing for how it's going to be for her when she goes to see her family again. She realizes that Nymeria's changed, and she's also changed. She's not the person she was when she left her family, so it's never going to be the same, even if they are the same, and we know that they're not. She's going to see, if she goes to Winterfell, she'll meet Sansa there, which is going to be a great reunion, but Sansa is just as different a person as Arya is now, so it'll be interesting to see how their dynamic changes. And if Bran also gets to Winterfell, and Arya's there, potentially they're going to include Arya in their plots. Maybe Arya will tell them all about her adventures with the Faceless Men, and they'll actually use her as a tactical, like a tactical piece in the army. Someone who can take anyone's face and go murder them is very useful. I think if Melisandre could do that, she wouldn't have had to birth a shadow baby. So I think it's definitely going to be very interesting to see how the Stark family dynamics change. And I think that the Nymeria scene was foreshadowing that it has changed a lot.
God, those are great freaking points. You make sure that's up.
Yeah, I just wrote guest rights and Valenquar.
Got it. I was speaking to Alizey earlier about this. My issue with, I know Cersei's on Arya's list. My issue with it is our connection to Arya killing Cersei. If that occurred, Arya killed Cersei. It's not built up enough in my mind for that to be as powerful as some other options. Great point about Arya, and we're talking so much about how Arya's changed. It's almost it's difficult to consider. Or it's easy to forget how much Sansa has changed, and I will be fascinated to see how Arya reacts to that, regardless of whether Arya reveals who she is. And I totally doubt Arya will reveal that she has the ability of changing her face to anybody. But that's a great point about Sansa being changed. All right. Again, if anybody wants to mention something about that, we'll get to it on the next round. But we are moving to Jon at Winterfell. So this is relatively short. Jon, I'm missing a scene because Jon is initially in the room talking to them, and I forget what he's talking about. Shit, I'll remember in a second. But Jon gets the letter from Dany and is talking to Sansa and Davos about it. I love seeing Davos reading without moving his lips. It's a little nod to his progression. Sansa is definitely voicing her opinion, and this shows that they are talking outside of the chamber, which is important. That said, it's also important for everybody to be allowed to voice their opinions. Jon also gets the letter from Sam. Well, real quick, Davos realizes the potential for the dragons to be something used against the whites, which seems apparent to us, but it's the first time it's been mentioned in the show. It's the first time it's been mentioned in the show or the books, outright stated anyway, I believe. Sansa and Davos are both against Jon going to Dragonstone. I loved that Tyrion was the one who wrote the letter. We'll get to Dany in a minute, but I love that Tyrion was the one who wrote the letter. It meant so much more to Jon, and Jon reading that last part about all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes was perfect. Also, I don't believe the letter, and Davos makes a point of this, the letter does not overtly threaten the North, but it mentions the Unsullied and the Dothraki, which Davos points out are subtle hints. Now Jon is in the throne room and announces that he not only has the letter from Dany, but he now has the letter from Sam. And despite every single person telling him he shouldn't leave, he says he's going to leave anyway, and Sansa voices her opinion against him, but he puts Sansa in charge. Notice that Littlefinger was not part of the group talking about the letter, which was Jon, Sansa, and Davos. Also, Littlefinger reacts very badly to finding out Tyrion is Dany's hand. He reacts very happily to Jon putting Sansa in charge. We also get the scene with Jon slamming Littlefinger up against the wall when, and I believe he says, "If you touch Sansa, I'll kill you myself." The parallels are apparent between Sansa and Jon and Ned and Catelyn. We literally have Littlefinger switching from his obsession with Catelyn to his obsession with Sansa. We have the same choking between Jon and Littlefinger as we did with Ned and Littlefinger. We also have the goodbye between them, which almost seems permanent. The parallels are undeniable, in my opinion. I mentioned this previously, but also something I noticed when Jon is coming out of the crypts, there are two direwolves on either side of the crypt entrance, and both of their heads have been knocked off. I feel like that's the majority of it. Littlefinger is now alone with Sansa at Winterfell, so he is definitely going, and Davos is going with Jon. So Littlefinger, I almost feel like Jon should have forced Littlefinger to come with him. But Littlefinger is going to be convincing Sansa to do one thing or the next. And as I mentioned, when Jon leaves, every single person at that council meeting tells him not to go, which means this is an opportunity for Sansa or for Littlefinger to suggest to Sansa to try to usurp Jon in some way. There's also the question of when is Arya going to get there and when is Bran going to get there. I do not think that Bran is going to send a Raven. We do see the Ravens being warred, so that could be towards the Night's King or who knows. I am not 100% sure one way or another and not ready to state an opinion on the matter. We know that Bran gets to Winterfell because it was in the trailer. Him in the wheelchair next to the Maester that was at Maester Wolken, who's at Winterfell. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Generally, I'll probably remember what I was forgetting a second ago. Mama, your thoughts?
Oh no, I'm not going to do this. You go to Niko first.
Okay.
She wants to annihilate me after I talk about Sansa, right? No, I wanted to add something to Arya. I don't think Arya is going to King's Landing because in my mind, it doesn't make sense for her story because her story is in Winterfell. And Cersei, if you think about it, Cersei is not directly responsible for Ned's death. It was Joffrey. And I think in some universal way, Arya's going to revenge her family only for the responsible people that she's able to, yeah? But I think she has to go to Winterfell and to help Sansa. I think she's going to kill Littlefinger or something. Maybe Littlefinger will try to, I don't know, do something to Sansa. And it makes more sense in my mind than this. And I like Crackpot as the next person, obviously, but the only person that really makes sense to kill Cersei is Jaime. Like from Martin's point of view, the way he writes books. So I don't see like we can say, oh, any person that is human can, it can kill Cersei. Yes, whatever, like whatever brother but it doesn't matter. Why Euron? I mean, Euron he's just not important. That's it. It's Jaime and Cersei from the beginning. It's not Jaime, Cersei, and Euron. Who the fuck is Euron? I mean, he showed up like in the whichever book, and he doesn't have a history. And Martin likes this, the story arc, the development, and the dynamic between characters. So this is how I see it. Maybe I will be wrong. It doesn't matter, but you know, and you have to. We all have to take into account that so much time has passed, in, you know, between books, and now we're waiting for it. And we have internet, we have, you know, forums where you discuss. Of course, you know, new ideas going to come up, and somebody's going to think about more than we should. So, you know, like every weird things pop into your heads, like maybe it is this, maybe, but it's not. It's actually, it's not. So this is how I see it. It's not that complicated. For Arya also, she needs to learn what I think, like from the character point of view, she needs to learn that you cannot undone all injustice in the world. You just cannot do it. It's impossible. You have to know that you are not capable of solving all the world problems, and you cannot avenge, you know, whatever her mission is. It has to have an end in order for her to become, or to become herself again, because her story arc is her identity from the beginning, and this is what it plays into it. So it's not Cersei, it's just coming back to Winterfell, because if you see, like, many characters in the show and in the books have this a trigger that, you know, sets you back to, you know, like gets to the essence of your being. And for Arya, it was Jon. It was always Jon, like a true brother, a true connection in Stark family. That's how I see it. So I have so many things written here. Blah, blah, something that TeeBaby said. So for Winterfell, yes, I agree with everything James said regarding Littlefinger and Jon. It was just, Littlefinger is just obsessed with red-haired women, I think. I don't know. TeeBaby was defending Sansa. Oh no, she was accusing Jon of what I accused Sansa in the previous episode. It was exactly this, like, be on the same page. This was the problem. But I think Jon did it I'm not justifying Jon, but I think Jon is aware that you cannot expect to make decisions like democratically in a true sense of the word. You have to, you know, be a king, have kingly decisions. So I think maybe he wanted to take everybody by surprise, and he wants to show Sansa that he trusts in her. But the question is, how will she manage this, you know, trust that is given to her? Is she gonna betray him, or is she, because she obviously likes the idea of being a queen, of a ruler. She always was drawn to this thing of, I don't know, thing, which I fucking despise. So like bourgeois, borghese, how do you say this in English? Borghese, it's in Italian. Bourgeois. She likes to be like higher class lady, and it's like whatever. And it was really funny in a funny way acted. Like, she was like, don't go, it's a trap, that's a trap in Dragonstone. It's like, you're gonna be the queen. It's like, okay, nothing, you know, like no comment after that. So it was really childish. What I liked about the scene the most, it was a nod again from the showrunner, so from the director. Somebody, I think it was the Umber guy or whichever, he said, you can Targaryens cannot be trusted, and the next thing, camera pans to Jon. It was really cool, sneaky little thing. My God, what have I have terrible handwriting, guys. I agree with TeeBaby that something. Oh, we're not talking about Dany, so I don't know. I think I'm gonna stop here. Thank you for listening to me.
Niko, you got fantastic thoughts. That's why you're here. Great point. I forgot to mention Sansa's ambivalence as soon as she's put in charge. It could be a trap. You blah blah blah. Well, I'm gonna put somebody in charge. Who? You? Oh, never mind. You're good. Go for it. I don't know if it was that ambivalent, but she certainly was feeling the power when that happened. I didn't think about this until you said what you said. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's been talked about, and I mean that. I don't think it's going to happen because of the same reason I don't think Arya is going to kill Cersei. I don't think the connection's there. But Arya is now may show up in Winterfell with Sansa and Littlefinger there, and may see the manipulation. That said, Sansa is clearly set up to be at war with Littlefinger, and what a beautiful at battle, at odds. And what a beautiful connection for them to be simultaneously feeding off of each other, advice and trying to get power while being juxtaposed. Which Littlefinger, the entire series, his goal is to get people to believe he's on their side in order to then battle or fight each other or manipulate each other, so that whoever wins, he gets to rise in ranks, claiming he fought for them the whole time. As his story progresses, people become more and more aware of what he's actually doing. He's always having to toe that line, but Sansa outright knows, I know what he wants. And that's the power she has. And that is exactly what Cersei told her. The woman's greatest weapon is what's between her legs. So anyway, big tie there. Again, I don't like the idea of Arya killing Littlefinger, but if they're both there, it's worth considering. I just don't think the connection's there. All right, Alizey? Sorry.
So I don't think anyone really needs to kill Littlefinger for his story to have a satisfying ending. I think at this point, Sansa can definitely out-manipulate him. And I think all that needs to happen for me to see this arc as kind of complete is for Sansa to take away Littlefinger's power in all the ways that he taught her to you know, manipulate others and take their power. I mean, I really think, like you said, she knows what he wants, and she's going to use that against him for as long as she can. And he has she's kind of his weakness, like Grey Worm was saying. Like, I think he genuinely cares about her in the same way that he cared about Cat, which is borderline creepy. And that means that he's going to kind of have a blind spot when it comes to her, and she will be able to out-manipulate him in a lot of situations. She might, you know, maybe she will get him out of the way by purposely marrying Sweet Robin. Then, you know, then who is he to the Eyrie? The Eyrie would be connected to Winterfell, and she already, it seemed like in the books that she was gonna, either he was gonna marry her off to Sweet Robin, or he was gonna kill Sweet Robin and marry her off to Harry the Heir. There is no Harry the Heir in the book, so in the show. So I think there's going to be some level of like marriage manipulation. And I don't think that there's anything that Littlefinger can do to Sansa that Ramsay didn't do already. And I think she's strong enough to really, I mean, Littlefinger is no Ramsay. He's a kitten compared to Ramsay. So she's going to be able to, no matter what he tries to do to her, she's going to come out of it fine. And it is going to be interesting to see how Arya reacts to Littlefinger, but I don't think Sansa needs Arya or Brienne around in order to stand up to him, because she's had plenty of practice doing that on her own, and she's more than capable of it, I think. Yeah, sorry. That's about
Okay,
that's what I got.
I gotta say, and I'm not just complimenting you because I invited you on, that I've got you here. First of all, I disagree about Littlefinger as a kitten compared to Ramsay. I do completely agree to the extent that Ramsay is brutal and horrible and does horrible things, and in that sense, Littlefinger's absolutely a kitten. And basically, I completely agree with you 100%. That Littlefinger can't do anything to Sansa that she has not already suffered. And she's already admitted to Jon that she's willing to kill herself rather than go, which once you've reached that point, that you are capable and knowing where your limits are. Anyway, I don't think Littlefinger is, I agree with you up to that point, but I think Littlefinger is the ultimate manipulator of this story, that he's the one with the biggest capability. But holy shit, did you just make a point that I had never considered and I think is brilliant. I don't know if this is going to happen, but hear me out for a split second. I don't know to what extent I'm repeating what you said, but you certainly are there. So I don't, if I'm repeating what you said, I apologize, but I'm mostly going to repeat what you said. I've always considered that we know for a fact that Sansa and Littlefinger are juxtaposed as far as their abilities to manipulate. I always believed, and I think most of us did, that Sansa's power, our belief in Sansa's power to manipulate will derive from her manipulating Littlefinger and then his death either ending his ability to exert his power or directly resulting in her usurping his power. And I've made a video about how he will believe that marriage to her will give him all the realms. There's a video on that there's a previous video on that. But here's what you said that I had never fucking considered. Killing Littlefinger, though I believe Sansa is entirely capable of being a killer and will have killed by the end of this, I without going into ridiculousness, think she already has. Hear me out. If Sansa's power is the ability to manipulate, which I think it is, which goes in multiple directions, to speak on behalf of the people in order to get others to fight for the people, to convince people to do one thing or another. Manipulation can be used for a lot of different reasons, but it's extremely important in politics and familiar relate all across the board. You want to be a good person, but manipulation is a factor. To show her true power, to kill Littlefinger, kind of removes that a little bit. The true showing of her power, and I'm not saying this will happen, but to make Sansa the most powerful manipulator in this books would be to make the believer conclude undeniably in themselves, for the reader to believe that Littlefinger is no longer a problem because Sansa will permanently be able to manipulate him. Let me see how I wrote it. Killing Littlefinger is not the best way to show Sansa's abilities. Sansa's abilities would be best displayed if we, as readers, believe Sansa can permanently outmanipulate Littlefinger while still benefiting from his advice. I'm not saying that'll happen, but that's fucking brilliant. Okay, Mama, we waited long enough. Are you ready now?
Well, first of all, we could go on for hours about this, and I really hope we're not going to, because I think we need to get to the end of this video. We've gone on long enough. But first of all, without insulting Niko, and Niko, I love you so much. You know I do. And I say this in the gentlest possible way. I think you bought in exactly what Martin wanted you to think. And I think you're wrong. And I think he wanted you to go that way. So I would ask gently that you reconsider that position. And again, I'm not an omniscient God, but I think you are the person who bought into exactly what Martin wanted you to think. It's perfect. And if I'm wrong at the end, by God, I'll hoist a nail to you, okay? But I truly believe this. I think that Alizey and I think you made some great points. And James, you might have made some good points. But I have said this before. I want to say this. With respect to their conversations initially, I don't think that Sansa gloated when Jon said that she was going to give her the power. I think it was an acknowledgement that he trusted her and that she trusted him. So let's go back to that scene instead of our theories, okay? So he left her there in charge. The point is, she is in charge of Winterfell now. And I think all of us inherently think that she can do the job. I mean, she can do that job. That's what's more important about the scene than our theories. She can handle being the leader of Winterfell. I don't think she's going to be there long before she gets that raven from the wall about Bran coming down. Now, that's where I think the rub comes in, because when Littlefinger finds out that Bran is alive, now he doesn't know who the fuck Bran is, but I think that is a threat to Littlefinger, because let's face it, Bran is the king of winter. according to patriarchal lines for the Starks. When he finds out Bran is alive, Littlefinger might get kind of antsy. So I'm not sure he's not going to kind of check out, or at least kind of wait around and maybe start getting a little bit threatened by Bran being there. And Bran, let's face it, he's not a little boy anymore. I mean, Bran has some weird stuff to tell. I think this is where the rub comes in with Littlefinger, and he might leave. Now, when he leaves, that leaves Winterfell a little bit unprotected, which goes back to the Night's King being there. But at any rate, I think really that we should move along in this conversation, because when Bran gets there, that's the end of it. I think Sansa's going to leave, and I think she's going to go with Littlefinger, and Littlefinger is going to be the king. And I think the rest of this is fluff, honestly. And I think it's kind of fluff because as we see the show kind of moving it along, the rest of this is shit. So we can get bogged down in the psychology of it, but I think we need to get into what is going on, and I think we need to move to the next scene.
And so we shall. Okay, so I did want to add one tiny thing I forgot earlier. I left out that Hot Pie asks Arya, or mentions how to make pies better, is that you cook it differently. I think you brown the butter first, and she goes, I didn't do that. And he says, you've been making pies. It's just one or two. That was really fucking funny and a great comedic break. So, all right. So, Danny, there's three basic elements that we need to talk, three basic scenes we need to talk about. One is with Varys, about the scene with Varys at the beginning, then the council scene, and then the Mel scene. So, as far as Varys is concerned, I love, this was what we've been waiting on since last season. Varys was on the boat, and we were like, are they not going to have this fucking conversation? These are my Danny eyebrows. Are we not going to have this conversation? She finally confronts him about it, and it was lovely to see Tyrion like, oh, hold up. And she keeps interrupting Tyrion. Loyal? It was well done. I loved Varys's response. And speaking of D&D, he is clearly, in my opinion, chaotic good. I was talking to Alizey about that. He wants what's best, but he will do whatever is necessary for that. And I'm going to make a throwback to a previous video in that in just a second. But I loved him, Varys, saying, if you want blind obedience, I will respect your wishes. And I was, in our heads, usually, probably as viewers, we think, okay, so are you being blindly obedient? He follows that up by saying, have Grey Worm behead me, because he will not be blindly obedient. He says, I serve the people who are downtrodden, treated like shit, and have been for centuries. And she says, promise me that if that ever comes to a head, you'll tell me. The balance there is that if Varys believes he can change her mind, then hell yeah, he'll say something. But if Varys believes that she's beyond the ability to be saved, that it's not possible to change her mind, as soon as he tells her, she now has the information that Danny now knows that Varys believes she's crossing a line, which means if she chooses otherwise, she knows Varys may go against her. So that's a real hard line to cross. And Varys makes the promise, and Danny says, good. If you ever cross me, I'll burn you to death. That is not okay. I know I can't say that enough. She did it in Meereen. As much as we wanted to hate Cersei for blaming Danny for all that shit, she did burn somebody alive. And she did crucify people. And though we understand it in hindsight and want to say, okay, come on, that's not the whole story. That's not the whole fucking story. But she still crucified innocent people. She still burned to death a nobleman, but we don't know if he was innocent or guilty. So, that's a fucked up thing to say. And that is, we just talked about her horrible father. I know she's not her father, but that's a real scary thing. And that's a line. It's an issue to come even close to that line. And Olenna straight up tells her, the people and the nobles are sheep. They will follow you only if they fear you. And she tells Dany at the council meeting in private, are you a sheep? No, you're a dragon. Be a dragon. And to stop listening to your council people. I get what she's saying. Olenna, it is a rarity in her entire life for Olenna not to be the smartest person in the room as far as charisma goes, manipulative power. That is a stupid way to view the fucking world, to think that your decisions are beyond reproach. And that's the thing with Jon in Winterfell. He is not beyond reproach, and he knows that, but to what extent is he willing to accept it publicly? Which journalism has not been covered in this thing, with the exception of like the Marillion having his tongue cut out for singing the song. This is the closest we've really gotten. But it's important for people to be able, public officials, to be lambasted publicly, to have dissent and be a public thing. To not listen to your advisors and be told that you should be the ruler regardless of their advice. And Jon goes against the advice of his people. Sometimes you have to make that decision, but to think that you should ignore them because you are the central power merely for that fact is a dangerous, that's fucking fascism, and it's what I've been saying for a really long time. It's a central an entity that rules the government in and of themselves. Fascism. And I know that fascism's got a million different definitions. There's one central definition, but the idea that one person rules, whether it be monarchical, imperial, or fascistic, that is not the way to rule a government. So I wanted to also tie in, please go watch my video, Tyrion's Final Lesson. Tyrion's Final Lesson. A lot of y'all are going to say I'm full of shit or that I'm completely wrong, and I don't know. I'm willing to say that a million times. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to talk about a series that we don't know how it will end, and that is the beauty of what we're doing right now, and the impact of foreshadowing. Varys is chaotic good. He does what he believes is best for the realm, and he adapts to the situation, but he plans way far ahead of time, so what he does in the moment may seem fucking horrible. Varys is the one who ordered the bastards to be killed. Varys is the one who wanted Tyrion killed at the Battle of Blackwater Bay. All of these are justifiable by chaotic good. You can't have a centralized government if people are claiming other bastards may be more legitimate. You can't have at the Battle of Blackwater Bay, Stannis is a better ruler than the Lannisters, arguably. I know y'all are arguing against it, and that's fine. But what he is saying, what Varys is saying in that moment, would be the reason that all of those actions would be justified in his mind. And again, watch the Tyrion's Final Lesson. It does a better job explaining this. And the reason I think this is so important for me to mention here, rather than just reference it, is because if that's true, and I would urge you to go watch that video before you understand the full breadth of what I'm saying, Tyrion is in that room arguing for Varys, how loyal he is, how good he has been, and how supportive he's been. That's my point there. Go watch that video and consider what I'm saying. And I may be completely fucking wrong. I'm well aware of that. Another thing we got out of this, and I'm not sure to what extent we can believe him, is Varys says that he knew nothing about Dany prior to her marriage to Drogo, except that she was beautiful and someone else.
That was all he knew about her.
It's something beautiful. Anyway, tiny little bit. That's fucking horseshit. I don't know for a fact that's horseshit, but he is close in times with Maester Illyrio. Now that may be, actually I take it back. If he knew of her existence and that she was beautiful. What else is there of her before she married Drogo? She had no power, she had no confidence, she had nothing to her name. She literally was a Targaryen and beautiful. That's it. She became better, and he straight up tells her that. But what other value did she have prior to that? Okay, so again, theory, forgive me. Most of you are going to disagree. Varys says, Tyrion says, you were born on a night like this because there's a storm outside. And Varys says, I remember that night very well. The dogs howled from morning till night, or the night till morning. Dany is a Stark. I know that y'all think I'm full of shit. Dany is Jon's twin, and I'm good with y'all lambasting me because I don't fucking know, and it's proof one way or the other. The dogs howl from morning till night, or however he said it. Dany, that is a tie-in to Dany being part Stark. I loved the council. It was great seeing all these different people with different opinions talking back and forth. It's beautiful to see all these women in the room arguing back and forth. And I mean Varys too. We've talked about this for years. Varys is a woman. Tyrion and Grey Worm, I think, and Littlefinger are the only men in that room. And Grey Worm has no penis, and Theon has no penis. And even if Varys is a man, he has no penis. Tyrion is the only dick in that room. What a dangerous thing for Olenna to say. I just want to say that. Also, this is the second mention of sheep in the first. Arya said it in the first episode. Leave one wolf alive and the sheep are never safe. That's a dangerous thing to fucking say. Dany repeats the line that Tyrion told him previously about you don't want to be Queen of the Ashes. And Tyrion looks up at her like, awesome. You're listening to your advice. And then 30 fucking seconds later, Olenna's like, you need to stop listening to that motherfucker. Be Queen of the Ashes. Which is a throwback to how Varys described Littlefinger. He would burn the world to the ground if it meant he could be King of the Ashes. And this is the foreshadowing we're talking about. All of this stuff is intentional. I don't know that. I would like to think so. All right, so going back to Melisandre shows up. I could not help but roll my fucking eyes higher than our ceilings allowed when she says, prophecy's a tricky thing. Fuck you, bitch! Prophecy's a tricky thing? When did that happen? It took you 6.5 fucking seasons. 6 seasons. Fuck you, bitch. Tyrion, prophecy's a funny thing. You burn one baby, you kill a couple of people. You don't know. Could work, could not. Snow's melted. Probably. We don't really know. It was funny to see her react that way. That said, she's still vying for Jon and Dany. I loved seeing Tyrion's reaction and trying to justify him being a good ruler, a person that would be on their side. Everything he said made a hell of a lot of sense. But it's time right after the Olenna comment for Dany to say, and bend the knee at the end of that. It was brilliant for Tyrion to write that letter. That's the majority of what I have to say. I'll respond to people as they go. Mom, you want to hold off, or you want to go first?
Oh, yes. James, you hit all the marks, honestly. When Olenna said, be the dragon, I'm thinking, it didn't really work out well for you, darling. I mean, you got your whole family burnt to death, But let's go to the when you were born. When you were born, the dogs cried all night. That is a callback to when Roz tells Sansa, I remember, because I lived at Winterfell, when you were born, the bells rang all night and all day for you. She's a wolf, but there were no dogs that cried for her all day and all night. But when Dany was born, the dogs howled all night. Come on, you guys. I'm telling you, there were 2 midwives in that room. She is as much a half Stark as Jon. They're twins. Okay. I mean, you guys, come on. This is a book. The person who wrote this book has laid it out perfectly. And if you don't think these things are important, come on. This is why I get so frustrated with people who say so-and-so is going to kill so-and-so. And I think, well, where is the justice there? I mean, if some third party comes in and kills Littlefinger, are we going to get a sense of vengeance or justice? No. It has to be somebody connected. All of this narrative is so connected. So yeah, the dogs cried all night. Would dogs cry for a Targaryen dragon queen? Not unless she was half Stark. I mean, come on. With respect to the political scene, I loved it. Here's the question we have, and Alizey and I talked about this earlier today. In the books, it might be more important because we think that Varys is a Blackfyre Targaryen. But with respect to the show, is Varys truly willing to die for the realm? I mean, his conversation said that he would die. Dany can cut his head off now. But yet he didn't kill Mad King Aerys. You know, he kind of escaped and lived another day. This is kind of like the Theon thing. I mean, you know, are you going to be a hero right then, or do you think there might be a higher calling for you later? So what is Varys' real thing? Is it truly for the realm? Would he die for the realm? I'll be curious to see what Varys does at the end, if he's truly willing to die for the realm. We'll see. But I thought the conversations were wonderful. And, you know, everybody bitched about Dany being tough in that scene. Yeah, she was tough and it made me cringe. But, you know, Martin has said that he sits in a dark room and he is almost psychotic because he listens to people talking in his mind. If you were Dany in that situation, if you had been through what she'd been through, been semi-betrayed by Jorah, and all the things she's been through, how would you act in that scene? This is how Martin writes the books. I think she would have done exactly what she did. We're a little pissed off because she's tough on him, but God, those are the right questions. I think Varys was lovely in that scene. And when she says at the end, if you betray me, I'll burn you alive. And he kind of smiles at her and says, I wouldn't expect anything less than a dragon queen. I mean, it's lovely. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was beautiful. And I have to say, I don't think Emilia Clarke looked more beautiful than she did in that scene. I don't think they made her more beautiful than when she looked like an elf, an elven queen, and she was talking to Lady Olenna.
It was a great point about the Elven Queen, because the first thing I thought of was all shall love me and despair. Like Galadriel, when she gets the ring in Lord of the Rings, kind of becomes like a evil Galadriel. And I think that's almost like kind of Dany, you know? She's, if you look at A Song of Ice and Fire as like a discourse, as a response to Lord of the Rings, a lot of the tropes that he shows are kind of like George Martin's rebuttal to what Tolkien did. So I think making Dany like silver hair, purple eyes, she looks like an elf, kind of like a otherworldly, ethereal being. And I think that was a very conscious thing, because the more beautiful someone is, the more terrible they could also be. And I think Dany is becoming increasingly beautiful and increasingly terrible. And I'm interested to see where she ends up at the end, because maybe she will be, you know, all shall love me and despair. She wants everyone to love her. That's her biggest thing. With the, you know, Missa, she wants all her people to love her, but she doesn't want to be the Queen of the Ashes. At the same time, she wants the people who wronged her father to pay for it at the same time, although she is willing to forgive Varys. And I actually, sorry to go like change the subject a little. When you said you think Varys is chaotic good, I disagree. I think Varys is chaotic neutral. And I think that's because he says in that scene that he did what he did out of self-preservation. And I think self-preservation is the cornerstone to being chaotic neutral. You'll do whatever it takes to get by. you don't care if it's a good act or an evil act, really, as long as it benefits you. I think good characters are inclined to benefit others. Evil characters are much more self-centered, but I think a neutral character is in between there. And Varys is neutral because while he is self-centered and focused on self-preservation, he does still want the Empire to be the best version of itself. He wants it to be in line with what he thinks a government should be. And in a way, I think like Varys and Littlefinger are as close to democracy as we're going to see in Westeros for a while, because here we've got two people who aren't kings. Varys was a slave, and they have incredible amounts of influence over the actual leaders. So in a way, like, they have input in a sort of democratic process in like choosing which leaders to elect by like getting behind various kings in the middle of this war. So that's my point on Varys. While we're still talking about Dany, I've been wanting to say this all night, so I'm going to jump into this completely side point about Dany. So she is sending the Unsullied to Casterly Rock, which is currently the seat of wealth for the entire kingdom. The Iron Bank is already after Cersei and the kingdom because, they're in severe debt, and all of these wars are only ramping up that debt. I think it would be fortuitous for Dany to forge an alliance with the Iron Bank. And I think it's been implied before that the Iron Bank like hires faceless men for the people who are in debt. So originally I had thought that this is how Arya would get to King's Landing to kill Cersei, that they would basically hire her to do it. But I don't think they would, because she knows Cersei. But I think they're still going to send people after Cersei, specifically because she's just increasing the debt without ever thinking about paying it back. And maybe Daenerys could offer to give them some of the gold in Casterly Rock in exchange for their assistance in the war. So I wanted to bring up the Iron Bank so you guys could all discuss it, because I think that's a loose end that still hasn't been touched on in a while.
That's a fantastic point, Alizey. It has not been said once in the books, but it was said between Tywin and Tyrion in the TV show. So currently, I believe I'm correct, Tyrion is the only one who knows that there is no more gold at Casterly Rock, which is a perfect shell game. And correct me if I'm wrong, making sure that's right. It's a perfect shell game for Tyrion to convince the Iron Bank that I will trade you whatever I want from you, and you can have all the gold in Casterly Rock. The issue with it is it's already been exposed, but that's like knowing the bombs underneath the table. So they're great fucking points. I did not even think to mention the Casterly Rock fact. Regarding the chaotic good thing, I would still say your point is made. I would still say chaotic good. However, if you believe you're the only one who can possibly bring goodness to the realm, then self-preservation has to be weighed against the good of the realm, that you need to preserve yourself in order to preserve the realm. Does that make sense? I'm not saying that you need to agree with me, but did what I'm saying make sense? Yeah. Niko? Or it's Niko, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, first of all, LaDonna and everybody here, you never ever have to apologize for having opinion different than mine. I'm intelligent enough to understand this, and I know why you're saying this, because people then in the comments, they think that we argue. No, this is the point of this podcast. This is why this podcast is so different than others, because we actually, we're not scripted. So I'm not saying other podcasts are bad. I'm just saying this is a different game. You see, this is why I don't like the society today, because you have to keep explaining yourself instead of, like people just listening and understanding things. Fucking hell. So, what I had it on my notes and I forgot to say, we have to keep in mind that I'm biased towards Arya, you are biased towards Sansa. That's obvious to everybody, I think. So, of course, I'm going to push to my side, you're going to push to your side. But I'm aware, and I forgot to mention that I had it on my notes, that yes, Sansa was, she was not like, fuck yeah, I'm going to rule the North. Of course not. It was, come on, it was more that it was the first honest gesture of somebody putting trust in her, like for real. It never happened before. So this is what I liked. And I like John for it, because he truly likes her as a sister. Of course, she has trouble trusting people because everybody used her. It's obvious, and I'm not saying that I hate her for it. I understand. So as for Dany and Stark, I don't think so. I don't have dogs. I had dog once, but I think the dogs howl because of the storm. That's like, I don't think it's a sign of. It's not the theory I follow, but I understand where you're coming from. Now, for all the scenes, Olenna just wants to get Cersei, get got, and this is it. She doesn't care about Daenerys or Ellaria or anybody else. She has this is the last mission and she's done. She's gonna be dead soon anyway. What the fuck did I write here? Nobody knows. Regarding Varys, I think that this monologue that he had was the most honest thing that was said on Game of Thrones ever. That's how I felt it. And I think he was even more honest than Ned Stark. I think he truly believes that. And if you go back in time and think about all the things that he's done that we know of, you kind of see that he's actually doing that. Like with the children, he's actually, gathering these kids and helping them have some income, So, little birds, his little spiders, little birds. It's always like he's putting faith into the younger generation. That's why I kind of like, everybody likes Varys, I think. And we never addressed, I'm not going to go into political and strategic stuff because, you already touched upon it. What I want to say, we never address the issue of the oral sex scene. I don't know why people are bothered with it. I could understand that some people find it cheesy. Okay, I never had any problems with oral sex. On the contrary, and I liked it, but not because of the sex or because of it was the two most handsome people on the show in my mind. It was because life happens. We tend to forget we are all involved in this war and who's going to kill who, but you forget that life happens during the war. You have to do laundry during war. You have to change light bulbs during the war, right? So people fall in love. People, life happens, simultaneously with all these Game of Thrones. So I think that's why they wanted to emphasize on this thing. That's how I see it. You may prove me wrong. You may say, oh, fuck, it's cheesy. Whatever, take it. This is how I took it. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
James, you can't give up on the gravy.
Never give up on the gravy. All right. Anybody got anything else they'd like to add?
I said my piece, I think.
Thank you for joining us, Alizey.
Yeah, that's great.
Niko, the Universal, it's lovely to see you. Thank you for being so wonderful. And my lovely mother.
And I'm glad we have a new member.
It's great to meet you all. And thanks for everybody being nice in the chat.
Anybody want to say goodbye?
Bye.
Thank you all for watching. Oh, I did want to say one thing before we close out. On last episode, I got really excited at the very beginning and said, "What's up, motherfuckers?" I cuss a lot on this show, but I probably shouldn't be doing that as the first fucking thing I say. So to everybody who was a little bit put off by that, I apologize. It's not the right way to refer to you. That's why I call you all lovely people, because you fucking are. And I love you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here, Niko. Thank you, Mama, for being you and for having me. Again, I love you all. And here's to Charlie. I know you were busy. Here's to MP. He was dealing with something. I hope everything's working out. Tony, I'll see you next time. Clare Gray, hopefully you can join us soon. And TeeBaby, I love you too. Sorry I had to leave late, but God, what amazing thoughts you had tonight. And again, thank you for being here, Alizey. I love you all. Bye.
Bye.